This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate third part of What If Naruto Was Trained by His Future Self. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
As he approached Kakashi's training grounds, Naruto scowled and said, "So you're saying you have a former Anbu in your Genin team? That Sai guy? Why?" The copy.nin said, "I'm not sure. His posing as a Genin is surely ordered, but I fail to see why. Perhaps Hokage Sama wants to protect Sasuke in the next Chunin exams." Naruto's next query was, "So, is he any good?" Sense his students in the distance, Kakashi said, "Well, he's definitely a few notches above Sasuke's level. You want to spar with the kid?" He nodded to Naruto, telling him to use Shunshin to appear behind Sakura. Sakura was actually sharpening the two kunai she was holding against each other as she played. From her early days as a genin, the girl had undergone significant transformation. She imagined that the rest of the team found her to be a real nuisance. She fell short, not just a little, when she measured herself against the rest of the team. Sasuke was unmatched in the beginning until Naruto significantly outperformed him, and she herself continued to stand in the same spot. However, that is no longer the case. She and Sasuke hadn't yet defeated the new guy, Sai, but she would eventually gain enough strength to handle the unyielding boy. Naturally, Sasuke was also gaining strength and speed at a rapid rate. Several times a week, Kakashi taught them some new things, such as jutsu or significant facts about foreign lands. She studied the Kaiden this week, Enshu no Jutsu, which was a lot like the Housenka except that the Enshu had a lot more of them and smaller fireballs overall. Sakura used a defensive move in which she was encircled by a shower of fire, which struck everything except for her. While Sai wasn't learning anything new at the moment, Sasuke had picked up a few Raiden jutsu that she hadn't bothered to remember the names for. Kakashi rarely spoke to the pale boy, which made it strange. Even paler than Sasuke was Sai. And that implies super pale, to use Tezuna's term. A hand landed on Sakura's shoulder from behind, and she whipped her body around. Not a single person on her team would do that, possibly only Kakashi, and even he hadn't done it yet. And Sasuke and Sai would never do that. Who then? Naruto. Naruto emitted a similar carefree greeting to Kakashi. "Yo. Kakashi had to help a lady carry her groceries up a few stairs in my apartment building. I saw this and helped out. That's why he is so late and that's why I joined him." The girl with pink hair exclaimed, "Liar," and pointed a finger at him that nearly touched his nose. The blonde gave his head a scratch. "Hey. This is actually pretty entertaining. I can see now why you do this, Kakashi-sensei." Not that Team 7 was paying any attention to the copy.nin in front of them. "It's not funny, Naruto. But, why are you here?" Naruto replied honestly, glancing at Sasuke and Sai, who didn't seem to be doing much. "Oh, this is my last day off before I start on another mission, outside of Konoha. We haven't seen each other in a pretty long while, right? Naruto's going to join our training session today. It's a really easy one, too. The three of you, go up against me and Naruto. 3 genin versus a junin and a chunin. Think you can handle that?" From his position leaning against one of the 3 poles on Kakashi's training ground, Sasuke got up. "Now, let's see how far you've come, Naruto." He gave the blonde a Sharingan style, focused stare. "As you wish, Sasuke," laughed Naruto as he and Kakashi disappeared from sight. Sakura exclaimed, holding her kunai firmly, "Oh, so we've already begun? What do we do?" As Sai unfolded a scroll that he had mysteriously found himself holding in his hands, he said indifferently, "I cannot sense either of them." With a gentle voice, he said, "Ninpo. Chaoju Giga." Approximately 50 tiny ink mice emerged from the scroll and dispersed throughout the training area. Sai began to wait without providing any explanation. Sakura inquired, "Will those find them?" but got no response. She gave Sai a scowl before turning to face Sasuke. "My Sharingan can't see any active chakra sources around us, except for those little creatures Sai just sent out. They're hiding their chakra well." Sasuke craned his neck to the left. Sasuke gave a quick shout, "This is a spar. No test of teamwork. I'm going to look for that blonde idiot." Sakura and Sai were left alone in the clearing. Alone with Sai meant that you were alone. The boy was reticent to talk. "So, you're supposed to be good, right?" At the sound of her former teammate's voice, Sakura leapt backward in mild fear and saw as Naruto thrust his fist through Sai's face, only to witness Sai detonate into a massive cloud of ink, prepared to trap Naruto. But Naruto had left that location a long time ago. Just a few inches from where his ink clone had just been scattered, Sai dug himself out of the earth. He just shut off his Chaoju Giga of mice and stared at the blonde shinobi in front of him, not saying anything. He didn't expect Sakura to assist him, even though she was standing to his right. Uzumaki Naruto. The boy with black hair affirmatively said. Sai rushed over to him and said, I shall now test your skill. Naruto asked as he easily sidestepped Sai's taijutsu and countered with a few kicks and punches that were either blocked or avoided. Could you not help him, Sakura? I want to see how good he is. Not too bad, Sai. Having not touched him previously, Sai was taken aback to discover that he was actually fighting. Not yet, at least not against his teammates. He was thrown to the ground by his right after taking a strong blow from his left, interrupting his cool fighting technique. Without saying a word, he got up and hurried over to the blonde once more. He was kicked from above this time, sending him into the ground. Regaining his balance quickly, he leapt backwards and decided not to use taijutsu again. Quicker than I am? Sai pondered silently. He believed he was safe until Naruto swept his legs out from under him and grabbed his left leg, propelling him several meters into the air. Fight me seriously, Sai. The blonde abstained from further attacks as Sai touched down without incident. Sakura was fighting the urge to droop her jaw. After learning that Sai was quicker than both her and Sasuke, she already thought he might be quicker than Naruto. She was terribly, terribly wrong. Sai's voice remained incredibly calm as he threw 5 ink tigers at Naruto, saying, Ninpo, Chaoju Giga. However, all of them were subdued by an unseen force surrounding Naruto, who just smiled at all of the ink stains on the ground. He was slightly taken aback when the ink stains on the ground transformed back into tigers and charged at Naruto once more before being wiped away once more. Pretty ferocious creations you have there, Sai. Sai's expression remained the same as it had at the start of the spar. Naruto observed that the boy was not able to read at all. Chakra was visible around Naruto's hands, saying, My turn for something offensive. Food and Sankantetsu. I hope someone knows some medic jutsu, you'd best be dodging now. Naruto slashed his arm around him, sending a vicious slice of destructive wind chakra in Sai's direction. Sai quickly dodged out of the way. Sakura watched with wide eyes as the area behind where Sai had been standing was completely destroyed, taking down about 5 trees. That will undoubtedly draw Sasuke's attention and bring him back to this place. While all of this was going on, Naruto continued to slash at Sai, who continued to dodge. It was as if the ink tigers, who persisted in reforming, had never existed. He's got wind chakra shielding him, Sai surmised as he sidestepped another wind blow. I can't afford to get hit by one of his attacks. They'll cause too much damage. However, while he was thinking this, Naruto kicked him forcefully in the side and used Shunshin to get behind him, pushing Sai into a tree that was spared from the attacks. Naruto squinted at Sai, who had stood up once more, saying, should I take him seriously? He seems competent enough to keep up with me to some extent. Sasuke landed in front of the recuperating Sai, who was holding his side, and the moment passed. He commanded the injured boy behind him to stay out of this. He's already defeated Sai. Though he didn't look over his shoulder, he knew that Sai wasn't feeling well. Naruto gave a finger snap. Let's do this then, Sasuke. Sasuke was shocked to find someone standing on his shoulders before he could even charge at him. Sasuke had Kakashi's right foot on one shoulder and his left foot on the other. The Uchiha was furious and flipped backward, intending to kick Kakashi out of his way. That Sasuke was furious enough to entice him away from Naruto made Kakashi happy. Let's watch Sakura's performance against Naruto. Sakura muttered, my turn, huh? As she tensed her muscles in preparation to charge Naruto. The pink head in front of the Jinchuriki was studied. She has also changed. Her hair has grown really long, he said, pointing out that her ponytail stopped slightly below her shoulder blades. Sakura had a wide ponytail, whereas Yamanaka Ino had a narrow one. Her eyes were partially covered by bangs, which also covered her ears and reached her breasts. He surmised that the Hyugas was more of a rectangle than Hinata's, so they were not the same. She continued to dress in the same manner, and he saw that she was carrying the gloves he had given her, gloves that had seals engraved into them, that had activated a wind chakra pulse to strengthen her fire techniques. Her black boots were also very high. Other than that, though, her attire remained unchanged. Here goes, Sakura, don't hold back even slightly. Sakura smiled and dug her right fist deep into the earth beneath her, saying, oh, I won't. Instead of Sakura tearing out a section of the ground, Naruto was expecting boulders to shoot out of the ground, the surface he stood on. He corrected, nice. Naruto was now standing on a massive chunk of rock and sand that Sakura was lifting. Using just one hand. You've gotten better, Sakura. But what's the use of this? And just like that, tiny explosions of fire shot upward, aiming to keep Naruto from escaping, and holes appeared all around and even beneath him. Sakura had apparently already applied the Housenka no Jutsu to the rock that Naruto was standing on. Wind Chakra powers Housenka. Before anything could harm him, though, Naruto disappeared from the rock and reappeared a short distance behind Sakura, his hand seals complete. Here, Sakura, Fuden. Haisu no Jutsu. When Naruto whipped both of his hands skyward, the rock Sakura was lifting fell to the ground. Sakura let out a loud yell as she was launched high into the air. Very high. Naruto was smiling at her thrashing form from the ground as she let out a little girl's scream. Hee, didn't know you could fly, Sakura. Naruto. Kaden. Housenka no Jutsu. Naruto yelled as he looked up at the tiny fireballs that were heading toward him, but he just turned on the Kyuka seal on his clothing. Sakura was coming toward the floor quickly once more, and Naruto grinned and gave a few fast hand seals. Fuden. Kukimikura. The girl with pink hair was taken aback when she felt air pressure from the earth, which caused her descent to slow down significantly. As though she hadn't just fallen a mile, she just landed on her feet. You could have died there, Sakura. You'd better be prepared next time you go flying, huh? Naruto. She exclaimed, storming forward, poised to choke the blonde. Naruto laughed as he just jumped around her and avoided all of her violent maneuvers. A few seconds later, she was panting. It really took a toll on her after she had to use 2 Housenka and a lot of chakra to lift the ground from beneath Naruto. Furthermore, she hadn't even touched Naruto. When Naruto turned to face Sakura and saw that she was prepared to go again, he said, "You've gotten a lot better, Sakura. So, why aren't you wearing your Chunin uniform, Naruto?" The response to the copycat was a shrug. He pointed sarcastically as he saw himself sitting with the current Team 7, who was fairly colorful in contrast to his black and gray outfit, saying, "I like my clothes. Even though they're a bit gloomy." Sakura decided to watch the Naruto, who was now taller than she was. His hair had grown out and was now partially covering his ears, much of it covering his face and eyes, and some of it even reaching his collarbone. He seemed like a very strong shinobi, and even though she couldn't feel any chakra coming from him, he exuded a powerful aura. She had only recently developed her senses, but she was still unable to detect anything from Naruto. But she was already certain it was the costume. She was aware that Naruto was skilled in Fuinjutsu, so his clothing most likely had some sort of unique seal that prevented anyone from sensing anything. Team 10 usually frequented the barbecue stand where Team 7 was currently dining. There was even Sasuke and Sai, the silent pair. "I've heard you're going on a long-term mission tomorrow?" Sakura turned her gaze from Kakashi, who was interrogating him, to Naruto, who was giving him the back of his head scratches only Naruto could. "Hey, yeah, it's a retry, I suppose." While Sasuke and Sai were eating their food in silence, perhaps waiting for this get-together to end, Kakashi nodded knowingly. "I'll assume you've prepared yourself even better than before." The blonde took a bite out of the steak in front of him and nodded. "MMH.MM. You bet, my team's ready for anything tomorrow." Sakura questioned, glancing at the meager serving of food in front of her. "How's your team, Naruto? More meat is needed." Inner Sakura was furious. Naruto smiled at her, as well as can be expected. He proudly gave himself a fist bump on the chest and declared, "I am the Taiko. How's things going on your end? I heard you're also going on a lot of missions from the old man." Sasuke replied icily, "Lots of useless missions, HN. The Uchiha informed Kakashi, we're more than ready enough to be doing missions like Naruto. And we still haven't fought each other ever since your lucky victory." Naruto was thrown by him. The blonde shrugged again. "We'll get to it eventually." Naruto traveled to his designated training area, which the Hokage had given him, as night fell. He owned the Forest of Death in its entirety. In the unlikely event that the Chunin exams were held here once more, he was even constructing an underground hideout. The remainder of his group had already entered and was presumably having fun exploring their new, unrestricted world. But thanks to the Chunin exams, everyone, aside from Tayuya, was already fairly familiar with it. Whether you were wearing special Fuinjutsu or not, his entire team was marked with the tracking seal, the Oitsumeru seal, so they could always find each other. That being said, he would need to remind himself to instruct them on applying the shroud seals, suppression, and silence to their own uniforms, only to save himself from having to do it each time. He recalled learning how to draw up the seals from Namikaze Sensei, and how frustratingly long it took him. The shroud was intended to conceal the application of techniques, the silence seal was intended for sounds and movement, and the suppression was intended for chakra presence. Those three were the fundamental seals of his attire, and they were all situated in particular spots. He teleported close to his team using Hiraishin. He already knew how to teleport close, as opposed to extremely close, to the beacons he had dispersed beneath his subordinates. His sudden appearances no longer often surprised his subordinates, with the exception of Tayuya. Tayuya was not permitted to go on missions outside of Konoha since she was far from trustworthy, as expressed by the statement, "It's too bad you can't join us tomorrow, Tayuya." His chin was scratched. A genjutsu user always comes in handy. He had his eyes narrowed and was staring at Tayuya. "It's really too bad." Tayuya rolled her eyes at her strange captain and said, "Whatever." She felt strangely comfortable, ever since she joined this group of outcasts. These peers of hers all interacted with each other in an odd way. And the truth was, she kind of liked it. She had amazing genjutsu, which could heal anyone on the team, except Naruto and Gaara. For some reason, they were impervious to everything she threw at them. Gaara attributed it to his perfect synchronization with his Biju. Naruto's experience was a little different because he wasn't exactly in sync with the Kyuubi, but he did have access to all of the Kyuubi's chakra at any time. Therefore, all Naruto did was release a large amount of chakra from his body to frighten away the illusion whenever his outfit alerted him to the possibility of genjutsu. As a result, Naruto had to use a ton of chakra to dispel genjutsu. That's why he still required instruction from someone in genjutsu handling. He also assumed that Tayuya didn't have much to teach since she was more of a dealer than a taker. "You know, since I've already burned a tracking seal on your body, linked to your very chakra presence, you can't really escape from me." Seated on the ground, Tayuya was recuperating from a physical altercation with Temari. Now that Gaara was fighting her, Dosu and Kankuru were engaging in a light sparring match. Naruto was aware that Tayuya had once owned a curse seal, but that because of Orochimaru's passing, she no longer possessed it. Even without the curse seal, Tayuya's strength remained immense. Her summons were intriguing, to put it mildly, but her fighting technique itself was lacking greatly. Really, she was terrible at taijutsu. "So, what's it you're saying?" Most of the time, Tayuya was impolite and had a foul mouth. Ever since she discovered she was left with nothing following the abortive invasion of Otto, she has grown somewhat out of that. Though, in the end, she didn't really care who led Otto, she did wonder. Admittedly, she had to concede that Konoha was a much nicer place to live, even though a lot of the residents were just careless happy. Go. Lucky types. In particular, her captain. "With this as proof, I could get you to come along with us." The redhead woman gave him a snort. She said calmly, not particularly irritated, just tired. "Your leader wouldn't allow this. He doesn't trust me, no one really trusts me here, so you should just cut the bullshit." He turned his back on Tayuya and stared at his friends. "Well, you can't really escape. Let's say you do run for Otto during our mission, I can find you in less than a second and kill you or take you back to Konoha. What does Otto have that Konoha can't offer you, anyway?" In all honesty, Tayuya replied, "Nothing. Otto means shit to me. In fact, everything means shit to me." Naruto spoke honestly, saying, "I don't trust you, Tayuya. You helped in the failed attempt to destroy Konoha. Despite it all being orders given to you, I still hold it against you." His tone was harsh. "I will kill all that is against Konoha, all that is out to hurt either me or my comrades." Tayuya answered, "You're the perfect example, a true stereotype, of a Konoha.nin. Didn't you know everyone is out to kill everyone? Everyone is out to destroy everything. Stupid idiot. Just like you, there's a shinobi out there who's willing to do everything for his or her own country as well." Softly, Naruto said, "I know." He pointed to his friends and said, "But I will not attack, I will only retaliate. I don't need anything else than this." He turned back to face her and gave her a direct look, saying, "My friends around me, willing to protect each other from everything. I don't trust you, I don't expect you to become part of what we are, what we've become and what we're still going to be." With no idea what to say, Tayuya just stared back, listening nonetheless. "But I want you to." His words caused her eyes to widen, and her chest was deeply penetrated by the sincerity of his voice. "I want to put my trust in you," he said. "I'll make sure you can join us on this mission. If my decision to trust you and want you as my friend, as my comrade, is wrong," he stopped. "Then I'll rectify that mistake myself." For a few more seconds, Tayuya and Naruto just stared at each other, her expression immobile. He signaled the end of the quiet. He turned his back on her, unable to see the sudden, tiny, and most importantly, sincere smile on Tayuya's face. "Anyway, Pack up what you need for tomorrow, we're going to be staying in Kumo for a month. Still, it passed as quickly as it arrived. After all, Tayuya rarely displayed genuine smiles. Samui, relieved that she could finally return home, made her way to the Konoha gates. A few days ago, the wreckage had fully recovered, but there were some documents that needed to be completed. For instance, how the Kumo hierarchy had taken this to be an act of war by Konoha. How absurd. Yugito, Omoi, and Karui had already arrived at the gates and were awaiting the arrival of the others. Though they were all accustomed to it by now, the wreckage had a habit of being late and then whining about it. Following a brief exchange of good morning greetings, Samui saw the Konoha team, along with one new face, approaching in the distance. A young woman with red hair. Narrowing her eyes, she tried to gauge this girl's personality, but she was unable to determine what kind of kunoichi she was and had not recognized her from anywhere. Naruto introduced them as Tayuya, a new addition to our squad, as soon as they approached her group closely enough to say hello. Samui was a little irritated with Tayuya since she made no effort to show that she wanted to introduce herself. Omoi said, holding a lollipop in his right hand, so the two of you have recovered as well, huh? Karui continued, a tiny smile on her face. Konoha sends the same team with us to escort. They must have great faith in you, despite having failed to protect any of us before. When the girl taunted, Gaara, Dosu, and Naruto just gave her a blank stare. Tayuya ignored them, and Tamari and Konkaru smiled in return. The four pig-tailed Tamari shot back, one would think two Kumo squads could protect their own cage. Yeah, what I remember seeing is quivering cowards standing in the back, Konkaru continued. Samui interrupted Karui's furious follow-ups with, why you? She gave Naruto one last look and said, I think it's best we forget previous handlings. Then she turned back to wait for the others to arrive. Yugito just gave her strange squad a smile before turning to face Naruto. So, two Jinchuriki? Huh? Sending one Jinchuriki to Kumo is already quite peculiar, don't you think? Especially with the upcoming Chunin exams. Naruto gave her a shrug. We mean nothing by it. I'm not even sure we'll still be there during the Chunin exams. The two-tailed Jinchuriki said confidently, but I am sure a mission was given to you by your superiors. Don't think you can act freely within the walls of Kumo. Naruto retorted, we're not, and I don't know what you're babbling about. Ni Yugito squinted at him, her eyes like a cat's, I'm sure. But I'll be watching you, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto asked, really? You'd watch a Chunin? A Junin like yourself? Che, for Jinchuriki, rankings hardly mean anything. Abruptly, a new hole appeared in the center of the gates of Konoha as an explosion erupted from behind them. One could see the running of a madman in the distance. From a distance, everyone heard, let's go. Just now, Darui's lethargic voice interrupted them, saying, apologies. She was also there. He said, robotically, as though he had said it 1,000 times, Kumo will cover the costs of repairing anything wreckage Sama may have demolished during his stay here. The elderly Fire Country chief gave careful thought to the Anbu captain who stood before him. Something's off, Hokage. Sama. Now that Azuki Yugo had completed reporting on a mission successfully completed, the two were discussing Naruto's advancement. His skills in Kenjutsu is far too high for someone never guided before. He can even get the drop on me in Hayate sometimes. She stated. You say he's just been promoted to Chunin and he was ranked as dead last in his graduating class. If he's the dead last, then the rest of his class will surely ensure that we would win any war in the coming years. The Hokage laughed at her inferences. Ah yes, Naruto.kun seemed to have grown a lot in past few months. Yugo took off her face mask and looked directly at the Hokage, her long purple hair blowing in the wind. She brushed some hair in front of her face aside and said, he's no dead last, and definitely no Chunin. I'm sure he's holding back during our spars, too, as he is never even slightly winded. Well, he is a Jinchuriki, and to the Kyuubi no less. He is bound to have huge amounts of energy, or stamina. No, that's not it, Hokage. Sama. He doesn't seem to be breaking a sweat during the spars. She lowered her arms. It's really too bad he rejected the offer to join my squad. He'd really make things easier. I am sure, but I think Anbu might not be a good place for him, anyway. Yugo shrugged. He's ruthless enough. I've heard he's on his way to Kumo? Yes, the previous time went different than hoped, but this time I'm sure all will be well. Azuki laughed. Yes, I guess the Anbu squad you sent out to shadow them will make sure of it. They'll only go so far, Kumogakure no Kyugyo. Looks like we'll finally be getting a tan here, Gaara. The erstwhile Suna Jinchuriki gave his captain a sidelong glance before resuming his observation of the village in front of him. Structures perched atop towering mountains, elevated to a height that approached the clouds. Kumogakure seems similar to Konoha. As the wreckage nearly crashed through the gates of Kumo, Naruto exclaimed in shock, "It does?" The two were walking through the gates at the back of the group. How so? Walking beside Temari in front of Kankuro and Dosu, Tayuya remarked, her arms folded, "Looks like a piece of shit village, alright." Looking over his shoulder and not really answering Tayuya, Kankuro chimed in, "It seems peaceful at first glance. It's what I thought when I stepped through the gates of Konoha for the first time too." As usual, Dosu uttered something barely audible above a whisper. Appearances are always deceiving. In any case, he was able to effectively communicate with those he wished to hear his voice. As Yugito leapt after the wreckage at a high speed, she commanded Naruto's group to follow us. The leader of Lightning appeared to have disappeared. Hundreds of Fuin Bunshin were already dispersing throughout the Kumo grounds as Naruto's group trailed behind. Security breach accomplished, Naruto smiled to himself. Team Unsen, Naruto, Gaara, Dosu, Temari, Kankuro, and Tayuya made the decision to end the day after securing their living quarters. Gaara stayed with Temari and Kankuro, while Naruto stayed with Tayuya and Dosu. If the teams ever needed to split up, these formations served as their backups. It had already been decided back in Konoha to keep their mission in Kumo a secret. It's possible that the walls are equipped with Fuinjutsu ears. Naruto sat at a table in the tiny kitchen of the apartment they were given and said, "Their wreckage is really a piece of work, huh?" Lying down on the living room couch, Tayuya smirked and responded, "He'd whoop your ass and you know it." Standing in his own bedroom, Dosu was taking off his bandages. "How strong are you anyway?" With a mischievous glance at Tayuya, Naruto rested his chin in the palm of his right hand on the table. "Strong enough. I know you've beaten Kimimaro in his cursed seal level 2 state. That alone makes you stronger than the Sound 4 combined. But you defeated him in that state with no scratch on yourself." Tayuya let out an agitated sigh. "I have to admit that says a lot. We were hard pressed to even land a single glancing blow on that guy, but you killed him easily." Tayuya gave him a fierce look. "We were strong. The Sound 4 were known as elites in Auto. And Kimimaro was our leader. How can you still be a Chunin? Is becoming Junin that hard in Konoha?" Tayuya said aloud. Naruto shrugged his shoulders at her, saying, "You can only become Junin through hard work, many missions, and many accomplishments." Dosu then joined Tayuya in the living room. "I just don't have enough of all of that yet." Rather than seeing a heartless shinobi, Tayuya arched an eyebrow at Dosu, who appeared to be a typical child. His hair was obviously black, he had a buzz cut, and he was currently dressed normally. She was taken aback to discover that he was missing his right arm, leaving only a stump with a metal connector attached. This is because the metallic arm actually had a normal hand. However, his face startled her even more. Most of it was made of metal. He let out as he sat on the other couch in the living room, feeling Tayuya's gaze on him. Orochimaru's experiments. Machine, flesh and wires. What the hell did he do to your face? You look like a robot. Naruto wasn't really paying attention to the two because he already knew his story and was still getting messages from his Fuin Bunshin on a sporadic basis. Dosu's right eye was still functional, hidden behind equipment. It sensed body heat and functioned as a binocular. His mouth was even stranger. It was metallic. Dosu smiled, and Tayuya couldn't help but think it looked really eerie. "My mouth, or to be precise, my vocal cords have been reinforced to allow certain Oden Jutsu. While the experiments had finished, I never had the time to try anything out before we were suddenly ordered to become a Genin team for the Chunin exams in Konoha." Naruto blurted out, looking at the two chatting in the living room, "We might be going on a mission with Yugito's team in a few days. Tomorrow we've got a training session with them." Since they both knew it was due to his Fuin Bunshin, nobody questioned how he learned this information so quickly. He turned away from them once more, saying, "It's funny, but I want to see how I match up against that Ni Yugito. They were given a mission to determine our collective strength, but I believe I'll just let them take on Dosu and Tayuya on their own. Dosu has come a long way, and Tayuya is also not someone to be taken lightly. They managed to eliminate the 3 Chunin with all out, but I wonder if they will be able to capture Yugito?" He was now almost fully informed about Kumo. Although his Fuin Bunshin was unable to interact with objects such as books or scrolls that contained information, people still talk a lot. Especially if they believe they are by themselves. Naruto could now confirm the Hokage's suspicions that the Raikage were assembling a sizable and formidable army. Furthermore, he was now aware of where the eight-tailed Jinchuriki was located. He was very interested in this potential ally. Since his future self had never informed him about Ni Yugito, he believed Yugito had passed away. Dosu was currently in front of Karui, Omoi, and Samui while Naruto pretended to be occupied by poring over a scroll filled with gibberish. In his place, Tayuya stood behind Dosu, her arms crossed over one another, and Gaara was looking around. Kankuro and Tamari were arguing about breakfast all the time. Naruto was relieved that he had left them this morning. Dosu asked the group, which included Ni Yugito as their leader, "Gaara defeated all three of you in under 5 minutes, right? If that's really the case, I wonder if I can skip fighting the weaklings and go straight for the leader?" Karui appeared insulted right away. Karui took her sword and swore, "You mummy bastard, I'm gonna slice those bandages all off," at Dosu. Omoi acted in exactly the same way without saying anything. Samui's eyes narrowed as she considered Dosu. He talks as though he is aware of our strength already. But he hasn't provided us with any personal information. His behavior suggests that he is more powerful than Gaara, but it is obviously a bluff. Very well. Calm as always, Samui cast a sidelong glance at her acting leader. But her two teammates were anything but composed. "What?" each of them exclaimed. "Ni. Taiko. You can't be serious, this kid, a genin, thinks he can best 3 Chunin. Let us beat him up," demanded Karui. The Kumo Jinchuriki shrugged indifferently and asked, "You do remember what happened before, right?" Walking forward, the young woman said, "I am a Junin. I usually don't get easy opponents, so let me have some fun here." Never undervalue the opposition. Dosu watched the Kumo Junin carefully, noting every move she made. In this case, she should be too much for me. "Hey, are you sure you want to face me alone?" Yugito asked with a smile as her minions moved aside to reveal her fangs. Dosu gave in. "No, you are a Junin, after all. I will have one teammate accompany me against you." With no motivation at all, Tayuya fell in step with Dosu, and Yugito scowled. "Just one? I think you want your entire team to back you up, though." "That won't be necessary." Dosu stood ready as Tayuya disappeared from sight. "They've begun." Yugito also assumed a combat stance. "Fine then, show me what you've got." "Ni. Taiko. Behind you." With a kunai ready to stab whoever was behind her or deflect any oncoming attacks, Yugito growled, but as she turned around, she saw nothing. "Got you." Yugito leapt away and landed a few feet in front of her own team, barely avoiding Dosu's metallic arm. Her team, looking utterly bewildered, obeyed her command to stay out of this. The Neko Jinchuriki was startled to discover that her vision was becoming increasingly hazy by the moment. "You hit me with something, didn't you?" Dosu's voice called out from behind. "I did." From in front of her, she said, "It hit you quite hard." At the same time, shouts from the left and right said, "You won't be able to stand straight," and, "You shouldn't have underestimated me." She saw Dosu coming toward her through the blurring vision, so she let loose a lot of chakra right away to protect herself from any attacks and temporarily distance herself from him. Yugito was hiding behind a bush near the clearing where they were fighting, and she was shaking her head to restore full vision. The Kumo Junin was irritated that she was so easily duped and thought, "Sound, he uses sound. He's really talented. Nekomata, would you please reset my senses?" Even though she didn't hear back, she knew she was back to normal because of the shock she felt throughout her body. She whispered, "Let's try this again." And a second later Dosu was descending on her. With caution to avoid being struck by another blow from that metallic arm of his, Yugito was able to dodge away and return to the clearing. As Dosu entered the clearing once more, Yugito asked with a serious expression, "Advanced hearing and control over sound. Not bad, Genin, let's kick this up a notch then." Dosu's eyes grew wide as Yugito disappeared from view, but he was able to avoid the simple kick that was aimed at his back because he could hear it coming. "You won't catch me off guard so easily." He spoke too soon because Yugito simply carried out her attack and punched Dosu in the face. "I'm faster than you, kid." It hurt even though the punch didn't send him flying. He revealed his metal mouth to Yugito while also spitting some blood after removing the bandages from in front of his mouth. The female squinted her eyes at his rival. "Ni. Taiko. Watch out." Yugito heard Karui's voice behind her and instantly jumped away. That voice again came from behind, but this time it was Omoi saying, "Look out, Ni. Taiko, he's coming." Perplexed, Yugito leapt away once more as Dosu charged in at full speed. She was, however, considerably faster. Watching both her team and her opponent at the same time, she saw that her team didn't appear to be as panicked as they had in the earlier warnings. You can imitate their voices? It's unfortunate that you move so quickly, Dosu said. But yes, once heard enough. One of my abilities is to be able to copy another person's voice. Capable of confusing the enemy. Unfortunately, I haven't had the pleasure of hearing your other subordinate's voice enough. I see, smiled Yugito. That's a dangerous ability, but you do realize I won't fall for it again now, right? Dosu laughed for a moment. I should hope so, since I do have more tricks up my sleeve. Dosu was performing hand seals, with his right hand touching slightly above his collarbone and his left hand trapped in a seal. But let's see if you won't fall for it again. Aten, Kensu no Jutsu. Yugito was still in the clearing when all of a sudden she felt hundreds of voices yelling at her and at each other. She recognized the voices of many people she didn't recognize, including Omoi, Karui, and Dosu's own team. This was no way for her to focus, so she fired up her chakra cloak right away, certain that Dosu was already moving. This would have been a killer move if I had been against anyone else. The kid is good. But the noises didn't go away at all as the chakra cloak surrounded her. What else can he do? I'm safe from any taijutsu for the time being. Dosu said, you're lucky to be a Jinchuriki. It was accurate to say, I find myself in the same predicament every time I fight Naruto. Taiko or Gaara. Fukataichu. His sounds were all infused with his own chakra, so in this instance, confusing his opponent was the real attack. That it would become a source of diversion was secondary. When facing a Jinchuriki, the technique either rendered the opponent totally unbalanced or would present him with the ideal opportunity to take advantage of. Dosu said, I guess I'll try something else, then. He bowed slightly and made one seal. And he said, Aten, Shigo no Jutsu. And proceeded to execute another series of strikes. Kachiyose no Jutsu. Yugito watched through her chakra cloak as Dosu called forth a polearm that had one large blade at the tip and 4 smaller blades on the side. You can't approach me when I'm like this. Dosu muttered, but I don't feel the need to do so. Sweden, Yonbushi. When Dosu thrust his polearm forward, Yugito's eyes widened. However, it appeared as though the polearm shot out water techniques, and upon closer inspection, she noticed a seal tag on his polearm. A cutting edge water technique, fortified by a seal. In spite of the chakra cloak, Yugito made the decision to avoid Dosu's 4 water images with his polearm. She watched them chop trees in half after avoiding their blows and remarked, that polearm seems to have water chakra imbued in it. My turn for some tricks, Kachiyose no Jutsu. Something appeared to be emerging from the earth all around Yugito, so Dosu braced himself. Upon closer inspection, Dosu discovered that 4 tiny beings, small ogres, had burrowed themselves out of the earth. These are my zombie ogres. They consume flesh. Yugito smiled, watching the 4 ogres charge toward Dosu. To defend himself, Dosu leapt backward and swung his polearm, yelling, Sweden, Swijinheki. Gradually, the cacophonous sounds surrounding her subsided, and Yugito became aware of the return of silence. She observed as her ogres grew lethargic and simply collapsed to the ground. He affected them with his sound. Yugito. She turned her suspicious gaze from her fallen ogres to Dosu as a loud whisper interrupted her. The sound of a flute suddenly filled the clearing. She heard the whisper once more, What are you doing, Yugito? You killed him, and blinked to see Dosu on the ground, being devoured by her ogres. Wah. What, you killed my subordinate, Naruto said as a great deal of red chakra began to swirl around him. An eye for an eye. Naruto charged ahead before completely disappearing. Genjutsu of this level. You're pretty good, too. Yugito said, gazing up at Tayuya from a nearby tree. Since she was a master of Genjutsu, she was able to neutralize the illusion with ease. She was a little shocked to still hear whispers around her, warning her to watch her back and such, but Genjutsu won't work on me. In the meantime, outside the fight, Naruto squinted his eyes at Yugito. Perhaps she could instruct me on how to handle Genjutsu. She doesn't appear to have needed much chakra to escape Tayuya's mind tricks. Returning to the fight, Tayuya leapt to his feet and delivered several hand seals. Kachiyose no Jutsu. Yugito laughed as he saw 3 enormous ogres materialize in front of Tayuya. Yugito was still surrounded by a lot of whispers that attempted to divert her attention, but she was positive that Dosu's prior technique, the Shigo no Jutsu, was to blame. Today is summoning technique day. Huh. Let's see how those summons of yours deal with. She used a chakra claw to slice through one of Tayuya's summons with ease. After a moment of surprise, Tayuya resumed playing her flute and gave the order for the other two ogres to attack the zigzagging Yugito. At Yugito, Dosu entered the battle and unleashed multiple water techniques, but the Jinchuriki was moving too quickly. Enough of this crap, Tayuya growled at Yugito as he moved quickly. Tayuya released her summons and executed a second round of hand seals. Let's see you try to beat this, old hag. Kachiyose no Jutsu. Another summon. Yugito scoffed, noticing out of the corner of her eye that Dosu had already expended the majority of his chakra. And only one this time? Yes, one smaller ogre than the three she had previously summoned stood in front of Tayuya. Hey, this one'll be your downfall. My previous ogres have the same ability as this one, but this one is just so much more effective. Yugito's eyes narrowed as numerous objects protruded from the ogre's body. Slithering, translucent, white. Serpents. Subsequently, the ogre was separated from the material ghosts, precisely 6 of them. Yugito smiled. This ogre is special, Kumo Junin. You'd better dodge. Yugito threw a few kunai at the slithering ghosts, but they passed through them as if they weren't there. Shit. I don't know anything about her, he said. They're just chakra shaped into those things, they don't have mass. Then all 7 of them arrived. There were 6 white ghosts and 1 very fast, moving ogre. However, she was a Junin, and an excellent one at that. With ease, she avoided all 7 obstacles, including Dosu's attempt to poke her with his polearm in the process. She dodged so much that she even kicked him out. Then she realized that half of her chakra cloak was missing. 2 of those white snakes had touched her. Once again, Yugito strengthened her chakra cloak to put some distance between herself and her opponents. It's unbelievable that I'm utilizing my chakra cloak for these 2 genin, but it's imperative. She glanced at Tayuya, who was engrossed in playing the flute. The flute is in charge of all these creatures, and those creatures drain chakra. Yugito threw some shuriken at Tayuya and saw that she had perfect control over her beings because the remaining ogre caught all of her shuriken with ease. I'll just have to get close to her to end the technique. You're letting your guard down, I'm right here, and don't forget about me. Were a few instances of whispers that were still present around her thanks to Dosu's technique. Yugito thought about Dosu, who had just gotten over her kick. You're wasting chakra. Your whispers don't affect me. And you're a fool, Dosu said with a glaring smile. Those whispers aren't meant to distract you. They're transferring chakra from you to me. The fact you hear them is the fact your chakra is being used. When Yugito saw he was correct, her eyes grew wide. She had been occupied holding up her chakra cloak the entire time, wasting a good deal of chakra. Then how come you still look so tired? Dosu sighed, realizing he was almost out of the game. It's simple. The whispers are draining your chakra, but they can't give it me. You're using a special kind of chakra, after all. A Biju's chakra is harmful to a Jinchuriki, or didn't you know? But maybe Tayuya can still beat you. Yugito shook her head and folded her arms, feeling a little schooled. What skills, and what teamwork. Yugito gave Dosu a menacing smile. You guys, make me want to go at you seriously. Yugito was moving quickly toward Tayuya, avoiding every ghost and the swift ogre. He emerged behind the red-haired girl, striking her in the back of the head with a kunai. Game over. Not yet. Tayuya's shape transformed into an identical replica of the single ogre she had called forth, nearly severing Yugito's abdomen, but the woman quickly leapt away. Tayuya was detected by Yugito using her nose, who said, Man, you guys are good. I assume you had beyond perfect control over that one ogre, huh? After finding Tayuya, Yugito saw that 6 material ghosts and 2 ogres were now rapidly drawing near her. Elevating herself above the trees, Yugito flared her chakra cloak even more and saw Tayuya playing her flute. Now the game's over. Tayuya stopped playing the flute and growled, Yeah, you're lucky you're a Jinchuriki. Naruto smiled at the outcome of the fight in front of him. His 2 subordinates succeeded in pushing a Jinchuriki to her limits despite their defeat. Those 2 really have a good working relationship. Hey, yo! Naruto raised his head from his spot. He was sitting right now on a little balcony in front of his makeshift Kumo apartment. His subordinates were likely being observed by multiple Anbu as they moved about the village or stayed inside. The man on his roof caught the blonde's narrowed gaze as he looked down at him. Hey, yo! Yes, what's with the cloaking? Don't you know guys like us should be smoking? Smoking? Naruto scoffed. What are you babbling about, old man? Adjusting his sunglasses, he said, Nothing new, just a question for you. You're rhyming? Naruto asked, putting down the scroll he was working on to focus entirely on the man. Your rhyming sucks. Don't hate, commemorate, what do you want, poser? I'm here to investigate. A bird told me you were bigger than 8. Using Shunshin, Naruto moved behind the man and asked, again, what do you want? Whoa, you're not too bad, but thing is, I ain't the mad. Says the guy with 8 swords, ready for instigation or retaliation. Naruto looked at the individual. You have a lot of chakra. You were sent to me by the Raikage? The man put out his hand in a fist, saying, my brother ain't my mother. He can send, but I won't mend. Name's Killer B. Most shit here is free when you're with me. Naruto sighed after casting a suspicious glance at the hand. He gave Kurabi a fist bump and said, I guess even Kumo has its local weirdos. Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto, you little guy, I'll show you why it's bad to be shy in this village nearby. Naruto stopped touching the palm of his right hand to resist calling forth Ego Kaiki. Nearby? We're already in the village, right? Man, you really suck at that. I wonder why this guy hasn't been noticed by my Fuin Bunshin yet. This guy is probably the 8-tailed Jinchuriki because he has the same amount of chakra as Jiraiya and me. But sure, show me around town then. The 2 Jinchuriki from Kumo were sitting in front of the Raikage's desk in his office. So, what did you find out? Sheepishly chuckling, Yugito looked at her lap. Actually, I fought his subordinates. I was too tired to fight him after that. I immediately squinted his eyes at Yugito. 2 genin made you tired? They're not normal. The entire team isn't normal. One of the genin defeated my entire team single-handedly. 2 of the genin together made me fight seriously. I think the leader is Junin material, even if he is a Chunin. He's a Jinchuriki, after all. B. What do you think? Killer B nodded wisely. 8 says to wait for more information to arrive at the gate. He says he's not there, only there if you stare. He can't be read, but knows where to tread. B's peculiar antics, as usual, made her roll his eyes. He turned back to Yugito, saying, so he knows we're trying to get a read on him, huh? So I assume you know a lot about his subordinates? Yeah, the spar from today gave me the missing information about the 2 auto missing. Nin. They're really, really good. If I wasn't a Jinchuriki, I might have lost. Despite you being a Junin? Yugito considered the question for a moment. Maybe? I see, that old man, he's too straightforward. He wants a war, sending out such powerful shinobi here. B went on to rap, saying, I think they mean no harm. The kid's intents seem to cause no alarm. Shut up, B. You do know you're acting too cool, right? You're too laid back. Just as he was about to enter a shop, Samui was behind Naruto, so he made the decision to go look for some new socks in town. Along with some new short dark trunks he'll use some new seals on. The girl was dressed in what he'd grown used to seeing her in. Her short blonde hair fell just below her shoulder, almost hiding her blue eyes behind the hair. People often say I'm high-strung, though. Samui's expression appeared to be stuck in neutral, I'm sure. The blonde man declared, I'm serious, it's too suspicious. It's as if you're planning something big. The slightly older girl in front of Naruto smiled, like a prank? Samui gave him a scowl. No, not like a prank. But what if I was? You're changing the subject. Naruto gave her a quick smile and said, man, you're the most serious person I met. Got a jet, before taking off. Samui cast a quick glance behind him. I'm the most serious? She asked, shaking her head and stepping gingerly forward. No, I'm cool. As Ni Yugito and her team were returning to Kumo after a fruitful delivery mission to the Lightning Daimyo, a freak began swinging a 3-part scythe and charging at them. Omoi scowled at the approaching freak and said, Oi, Taiko, what do we do here? Kumo was only 3 or 5 miles away from them. His ability to gauge distance was always lacking. Who are we to not end it if he's picking fights? Karui, the redhead, said, reaching for her sword. With all the killer intent he's radiating, it looks like he's serious, Yugito sighed in irritation. But be careful, he seems strong. Karui and Omoi executed the preemptive strike, just as they always do as a team, but this time, their adversary was already coming at them. Their opponent appeared to be acting bad. Crazy as he swung his scythe around, which was attached to a chain on his hand, in contrast to the swordsmanship that Karui and Omoi possessed. However, the pair of Kumo.nin proved difficult to outwit and skillfully sidestepped his attacks. Omoi jumped backwards, knowing he couldn't get close if his opponent was attacking in such a way. Who the hell are you, anyway? He asked. They required some long-distance strikes. You pussies need to be sacrificed. Karui, who had also leapt back, scowled at the awkward response. This guy's crazy. Okay, how about some ninju? She said, but Yugito interrupted her by announcing a jutsu. Doden, Ishi no Jutsu. Hurrying to move aside, Karui and Omoi witnessed as numerous sharpened rocks struck their opponent's body. Fatal hits. Hey you, fucking cat. That hurts. Yugito squinted at his words, at his injuries. I struck him in multiple key spots, but he isn't giving up. He also said, cat, isn't that right? She felt someone was suddenly coming at them from behind. Who? Hidan. You can't handle this alone? Shut the hell up, Kakuzu. Despite being a censor ninja, Yugito hadn't sensed this other guy before, so now she was worried. The fact that he couldn't train completely because it would reveal too much to the obvious eyes observing him was starting to get on his nerves. The Yukon techniques would draw national attention, his Madden techniques would raise even more questions, and the numerous new food and jutsu he had developed could not be experimented with. He could barely practice his Kenjutsu Kata. Thus, he was currently content to do nothing in Kumo. While Tamari and Konkaru were honing their individual techniques, Gaara found himself in a situation similar to his own. It was clear that Dosu and Tayuya were having fun in the village, which made him wonder what Otto was like. Although Kumo might appear the same to others, he experienced something entirely different. Nobody here detested him, so he wasn't met with glares. Yes, he did enjoy strolling around the town and entering stores where the proprietors did not refuse to let him in. Observing and examining young women without considering that, unlike in Konoha, he would never have a chance. It's a shame that this strange man was pursuing him. Was he attempting, in some way, to be his friend? Look, B. I'm trying to relax here. You're rapping grates on my nerves. Naruto, are you crazy? These legendary rhymes be amazing. He was about to exclaim, doesn't even rhyme, old man, when something abruptly stopped him. A Fuin Bunshin's dispel, having followed Yugito's group out of the village. It seems that Kumogakure's barrier only picks up chakra that is entering the village. However, it was unsettling what his Fuin Bunshin had warned him about. Akatsuki. Without wasting any time, Naruto delivered Kenpo, Buseiken, Kyo no Jutsu, with a few quick hand seals. Even more perplexed than Karabi was when he saw nothing happen, he was a little surprised to see the blonde next to him perform some hand seals. B. I have to go. As Naruto walked away, Killer B was unable to respond. He departed carrying a yellow flash. Karabi gasped in surprise. Now that's something fresh. He seemed to be thinking deeply as he put his hand to his chin. Now should I go report this to bro? Or after that flash I go? Gaara jerked his head in the direction of the chakra pulse, but he was certain that he was the only one who had detected it. Ultimately, it was just Naruto's way of alerting the other members of the team to a problem. His alarm system. He did a few seals quickly, knowing that his blonde captain wouldn't be at the place where he felt the chakra alarm. He muttered to himself, Kenpo, Buseiken, Oitsumeru no Jutsu, and focused on where Naruto had disappeared. That's quite a distance, he said, hastily exiting the room and hoping the others followed suit. I have to move quickly. While on a training field, Tamari and Konkaru had also observed Naruto's alarm technique, which causes a chakra pulse to travel through their bodies and indicates its source to the recipient. Konkaru exclaimed, I can feel Gaara heading out already. Something's definitely up. Let's go. Tamari yelled back, are you an idiot? Naruto and Gaara can leave the village easily with their jutsu, but for us it's different. We won't be able to just leave Kumo like that. As he and Tayuya entered the clearing, Dosu spoke, rest assured. I'll be able to help out in that front. Dosu was also very nervous because Naruto had never used the alarm jutsu, or Kyo technique, before. I'll distract the guards with my Aten jutsu. Even Junin will fall for it. It'll give us enough time to sneak out. Maybe I could use some genjutsu? Tayuya proposed. Shitheads won't see us coming and won't see us leaving. Omoi looked at the bloody mess in front of him and scowled. What the hell is up with this guy? Why isn't he going down? With Karui and Omoi's combined skills handling the strange man with gray hair in front of them, Samui was standing back. Yugito. Taiko, it seems he is invulnerable to Kenjutsu? I'm afraid it's not just Kenjutsu, Yugito muttered, her face bearing a serious expression. I've placed him under my most powerful genjutsu, capable of taking down even an experienced Junin. If her observation was accurate, his partner Kakuzu was standing still. That misplaced genjutsu also depleted a significant portion of my reserves. These two are trouble. She cleared her throat once to gather her thoughts. Samui. You should find an opening and get away. Get reinforcements here. Samui looked at her, calm as ever. What about? Yugito interrupted her, saying, that won't happen. She had no idea that Kakuzu was smiling behind his mask when he said, his partner is actually expecting me to summon or use signal birds. She told her blonde subordinate, as soon as things get rougher and that masked one joins in. You get away. I'll go. Jinchuriki. Kakuzu heard Yugito and Samui talking, and he yelled, who? Hidan, stop fucking around. With a dramatic gesture, Hidan pointed at Kakuzu and exclaimed, fuck you, Kakuzu. These two cowards sliced my entire body up. I'd like to see you try and move after that slicing shit. Before turning back to face his two opponents. You two are getting it now. Karui clenched her sword more firmly. Omoi, we've unleashed everything we have on him. Omoi gave a head nod. Electricity doesn't faze this guy either. I guess we'll just have to try that. Karui glanced at Omoi, being careful not to lose sight of Hidan. Yeah. Let's cut him up. With a laugh, Hidan shifted his grip on the side from the handle to the chain that was fastened to it. Come, weaklings. Kakuzu yawned quickly as Karui and Omoi nodded to one another and prepared to charge at him. This should be interesting. Seeing as how Samui was getting closer, Yugito took that as a warning and got ready to jump in and save Omoi and Karui should anything go wrong. Hidan called out, Kadu. Kirakata. As soon as Omoi and Karui were out of sight, and Karui and Omoi both performed Zatai. Konguki. Sadly for Omoi and Karui, Hidan was encircling him with his scythe, fortifying himself completely. Omoi and Karui landed in front of Samui and Yugito, escaping with only minor cuts. Yugito surveyed the two of them and said, you two okay? Omoi said in a displeased tone, just a nick, Taiko. Karui tightened her jaw. How can he still move so fast? He should be on the ground, completely dead. Just as Kakuzu was still doing nothing, Hidan broke into a fit of hysteric laughter. In between fits of laughter, he managed to utter, you guys are so screwed. Karui asked, tilting her head in disbelief at the strange red triangle that Hidan was standing in. What the hell is that? And how come he's changed skin color? He looks like a damn skeleton. Samui replied calmly, he just created the triangle. After licking his scythe he instantly changed into this form and then started drawing the triangle with his feet, with his own blood. Karui cast a suspicious glance at Hidan and said, I see. So he is getting weirder, after all. Samui. The blonde answered, yeah, I'll join the combo this time. Close in and I'll follow, up. Once more, Omoi and Karui dashed forward, with Samui trailing closely behind. But as Hidan screamed in agony and, delight, he stabbed himself in the leg with a short black sword he took from inside his cloak, widening Samui's eyes. Karui and Omoi crashed to the ground, both screaming, and Samui stopped racing after them. She landed between Karui and Omoi, asking, what happened? And saw that both of them had large amounts of blood coming from their right legs. Hidan, who had stabbed himself in the right leg, was the target of her narrowed gaze. You wound yourself. You wound them? A body. Link technique? Hidan laughed, looking up at the sky. Jashin has deemed you unworthy. A curse has fallen upon you and now only death awaits. Wahahaha. With his face still turned toward the sky, Hidan stopped Samui as she attempted to advance. He appeared to be giving her this crazy sidelong glance. Make one move and the next stab is through the head, Blondie. That goes for you too, Jinchuriki. Walking slowly towards Yugito, Kakuzu said, seems it's over. Hidan, kill them. I'll take her out. You're not the boss, Kakuzu. I want to play a bit more, Hidan said, lightly slicing his chest with his short sword. Wahahaha. He laughed at Karui and Omoi's agonizing screams. But before he could finish laughing, he was forcefully kicked out of the triangle he was standing in. The new arrival gritted his teeth and said, Akatsuki. As Naruto went to see if everyone was still okay, Kakuzu immediately took a close look at him and appeared genuinely curious about the newcomer. This kid is aware of who we are, and I didn't sense him. He appears ready. He started, hey, you fucker. I was in the middle of something, you bet. But was interrupted when Naruto suddenly materialized next to him and kicked him all the way through a tree and more. He's quick, Kakuzu remarked as she saw Hidan continuing to fly away from them, and his blows have a lot of power. Naruto approached the struggling Omoi and Karui and said, you two okay? He made two shadow clones and turned to Samui because they were in great pain. My clones will carry Omoi and Karui. Get away from here, back to Kumogakure. I'll clean up. Beside Naruto, Yugito said, "I'll stay back, too. They seem to be after me." Facing the three people in front of him, Kakuzu folded his arms and said, "You're pretty good. We only need that girl beside you, kid. We'll let the rest of you go. You don't want to be killed here." Naruto gave Kakuzu a fierce glare and said, "Actually, you're after me too." Kakuzu brightened slightly. "What, so you're a Jinchuriki too? Those others don't have any worth and you two are just targets. This day isn't as lucrative as I hoped it'd be. I'll change the offer, then. Both of you come quietly and I won't kill anyone." Naruto accepted Kakuzu's kind offer with, "Yugito-san, please leave this to me. I'll kill this guy and the other one." "Naruto-san," Samui said, noticing that Naruto had slightly turned his ear toward her even though he didn't look back. "The other one can defeat you if he gets a hold of your blood." The Akatsuki member who was still present spoke up before Naruto could respond. Looking at the ground, Kakuzu said, "You pissed me off. Ignorance was something he disliked. I've decided." As Yugito and Naruto prepared, Samui began to pursue Naruto's Kage Bunshin, who was carrying the other two Kumo Chunin. Kakuzu let out a scream and grew into a larger figure. Right where Naruto and Yugito were standing, a sudden eruption of wind, fire, and lightning blasts occurred. They both managed to flee and land farther apart. Impressed, Yugito exclaimed, "3 elements at once?" Naruto gave a head nod. "Yeah, somehow I think that's not all he can do. I'll take him out right now." Yugito watched in dismay as chakra burst all around Naruto. She watched Naruto's chakra form as her vision cleared and the smoke from Kakuzu's attack began to disappear. What the hell is that? The Konoha.nin gave one shake of his head. "Not right now." Yugito's mouth dropped a little as Naruto appeared behind Kakuzu, seemingly made of several chakra arms and chakra orbs. Rasenrangan, now, in great form. Kakuzu crashed hard into the earth after taking multiple Rasengan strikes. Naruto was startled to see Kakuzu entirely unharmed as he hit the ground. "Shit, am I still insufficiently strong? An attack like that won't harm me, brat," Kakuzu exclaimed as she appeared to be shining a metallic blue or gray and was encircled by black threads. "Raiden, Kazanrai," Kakuzu growled, dodging the little thunderstorm Yugito threw at him. He then sent a wind blast in her direction. All of his attacks are so expertly executed, Yugito thought as she made a hasty retreat behind trees that would protect her. Before hitting the ground, Kakuzu's strike struck through roughly 20 trees, sending Yugito flying viciously. With deadly seriousness, Kakuzu turned to face Naruto and said, "I'll deal with you first. I just know you're going to be a hassle." Naruto's whole world went dark before he could blink. All around him came Kakuzu's voice, "Gokabuto Maruyan." Kakuzu's threads all came together to form a massive dome that ensnared Naruto. But as he looked around, the blonde didn't seem too concerned. White flashes appeared to be flashing on the dome's ceiling and walls. The blonde leaf ninja barely made out that the wind blast originated from a white mask to his left, exclaiming, "Food and Atsugai." But he had plenty of time to set his outfit's Kaiyufu absorption seal in place. "An attack like that won't harm me, old man," he said, echoing Kakuzu's earlier remarks. "Interesting. You seem to have a defense against Futen? How about this? Kaden, Zukoku." Regretfully, there was a 5-second pause in between element absorption seals. Naruto dodged the massive fire attack and swore as he appeared quickly near a wall of black threads. However, the wall attacked him the instant he got near it. Threads he controls. So he can close this dome in that manner alone? Is he teasing me? In order to escape the dome, Naruto swiftly leapt into the smoke that Kakuzu's earlier attack had produced and used Hiraishin. A few Hiraishin seals had already been planted by him around the clearing where they were fighting. Naruto executed a couple of complex hand seals from a distance. Yukin, Shaonetsu Jigoku. As red chakra flared wildly all around him. Naruto then appeared to toss the chakra cloak off of him and in the direction of Kakuzu's dome. The chakra cloak that had encircled Naruto grew larger as it got closer to the dome. It burned red and purple, enveloping the dome, which was 3 times larger than the Hokage Tower. A single figure, glaring at Naruto, was struggling to move forward in the middle of the dome as it was slowly collapsing. He collapsed to one knee, saying, You managed to kill 3 of my 5. You'll pay for this." At that moment, Naruto released the Yukin technique and was no longer able to call it forth, turning back to his normal form. "I lost nearly all of my energy during that attack, and he hasn't stopped." His eyes grew wide as Kakuzu began to stand up once more. Naruto pulled off another round of hand seals as he desperately tried to gather chakra once more. Futon, Ren. Naruto's eyes widened as Hidan's scythe penetrated the entire right side of his chest, piercing through his ribcage and puncturing his lungs. "Not this time, you fucking brat," he exclaimed. He threw Naruto aside and gave Kakuzu a disinterested look, declaring, "You're dead. You had trouble with that weakling, Kakuzu?" Naruto. Hidan turned to see a boy with red hair standing next to Naruto's bloody mess. Now, Kakuzu approached Hidan and peered at the scene as well. "That kid you just cut down is also a Jinchuriki. It seems I exhausted his chakra reserves." Gaara's glare begged for blood as he directed all of his killing intent toward Hidan. "So you cut him down?" Hidan laughed more and more, and Kakuzu sighed. "Damn right I did, ya loser. Are you his friend or something? Want to avenge him?" Hidan said. The Jashin follower mocked, "Come here and get killed too, weakling." Hidan was encircled by the exploding ground before he could say anything more. Kakuzu was able to dodge the unexpected attack with enough speed. "Sand?" Kakuzu narrowed his eyes at the visitor, thinking. Maybe something to do with the Sandaime or Yondaime cage. Not surprisingly, Hidan cut his way out of the dome of sand that Gaara had made with his scythe. He's powerful. Even a food and ninjutsu couldn't provide such a simple escape. Gaara attempted to continue, but Naruto's voice interrupted him. As Naruto began speaking, Gaara kept her eyes fixed on Hidan and Kakuzu and said, "Goo. Gaara. Don't. Get out of here, they're both too strong." "We're not the only ones anymore, Naruto." Yugito's voice was heard next, not Gaara's. It appears that she had just arrived with one Konoha team, Naruto's remaining subordinates. Kurabi had landed in front of Naruto's group, saying, "Hey, yo, oh yeah, baby." Kurabi's at the scene, ready to intervene. "You better run from here, or you're going to disappear." Kakuzu told his partner, the eight-tailed Jinchuriki. A couple of Leaf Chunin and another new Jinchuriki. The mask wearing Kakuzu appeared to suggest. He lost the Akatsuki cloak in the previous battle. "We're retreating, Hidan." "Excuse me, Hidan." "What? Why? Are you tired, you coward?" he yelled. "Calm down, you annoying moth." Kakuzu stopped his tirade, "Or I'll kill you." Hidan swung his scythe toward Kakuzu's face, saying, "You can try, fucker." But Kakuzu outwitted him and knocked the Jashin follower to the ground. Kakuzu had one hardened thread around his neck before Hidan could say, "We're leaving." "I would have stayed if any of these fools had strong hearts, but they don't. I'm not risking my own for some malfunctioning or weak ones. Try me, Hidan. I'll cut off your head." Hidan just scowled, realizing he was better. "Fine, ya loser. We'll leave them to die for another day." The group turned to face the horribly injured Naruto after watching the two Akatsuki members shunshin away. "Takumo, as fast as we can." Timeskip. 30 days. All he felt for the village he was now passing through was contempt. Just because he was a Hyuga, his team had 2 Junin with them, and he assumed Hinata, who was from the main branch, would have more. Would he really be able to keep Hinata safe in Kumo if he was the one defending her? Knowing Kumo, though, they would have killed him anyhow. No, he had to be alert at all times in here. "Don't worry, Neji. The green beast shall protect you." Instead of getting angry with his sensei, Neji decided to lash out at Shiranui Genma, the other Junin who was with them. Even with Guy, the man who chewed Senbon had not said much on the journey to Kumo. "Guy. Sensei, I can see a shinobi in Kumo uniform." Neji, unable to resist, rolled his eyes at his naive teammate. He was about to make a remark about how ridiculous he was, but 10 beat him to it. "Of course, Lee, we're already in the village, you idiot." Guy didn't seem to have heard. "Excellent observation, my student. We must be in Kumogakure." Neji really wanted to turn around and go back to Konoha at that very moment. When Guy and Genma abruptly stopped walking in front of him, he moaned to himself. He glanced ahead inquiringly as to why they had stopped, only to recognize a familiar face. Though he couldn't recall the girl's name, he was aware that she had once been a Suna.nin who had turned leaf. She used to wear her hair in 4 pigtails, he remembered, but now it was loose and one tail protruded on the right side of her head. The Konoha Hite 8 on her forehead prevented bangs from getting in the way of her vision. "You're early," said the girl. "I'm Sabaku no Damari. I'll be helping you get familiar with Kumo, though I still don't know most of it. I do know where the Konoha teams are staying, so, which team are you?" He bowed deeply and exclaimed, Young blossoming girl. My name is Maida Guy. When his pupil realized this, he wanted to match the effort. Remarkably, he bowed even more deeply, almost touching the ground with his forehead. Hua. Yash. I am Rock. Lee. Tamari looked in disbelief at the couple as they bowed and called each other by name. Genma came forward to give her a helping hand. Shiranui Genma, and you can ignore these two. Tamari accepted his hand, waiting for the other two to make their introductions. Hyuga Neji. 10. Your brother defeated me during the previous Chunin exams. Tamari noticed with amusement that the girl actually glared at her. My brother is crazy strong, don't let it get to you. Subsequently, she realized that Genma continued to hold her hand. She deadpanned, you can let go now. The Junin smiled, then relaxed. You're still a genin, right? Why are you leading us around here? I was told to, the fair-haired girl shrugged. Am I to assume the others will also be arriving earlier than expected? Your team is 2 days early. Genma gave a headshake. As he pointed to the still bullying couple calling out each other's names, he said, no, you shouldn't. These two are insane when it comes to traveling. It took Tamari about 3 more minutes to get moving, and then Guy and Lee did as well. Maida Guy, Shiranui Genma, Hyuga Neji, Rock Lee and 10. We don't know that Genma Guy, right? Why are you asking me? This time we can just observe the Chunin exams, it's our given mission anyway. Since they couldn't be heard by the other players anyway, the 3 Fuin Bunshin were aimlessly chatting to each other as they strolled around Team Guy. If the Hyuga used his Dujutsu, he might be the only one who could see them as clouds of chakra, but he wouldn't know any different. I wonder if our old team is participating. Knowing Kakashi, I think you don't have to worry about that. The clearing echoed with the sound of someone panting. Craters, toppled trees, and crushed boulders were all remnants of a bloody struggle that had ended moments earlier. Dude, you've got better. Naruto was clearly exhausted as he loudly exhaled. With his hands on his knees, he was bracing his upper body as he considered his next move. His opponent was on the ground, barely able to stand, and was faring much worse. Ughj, he started to say, but was cut off by a very dry cough. Not good enough. To make things more difficult, Naruto chose to keep quiet about the fact that he had used Gogyo Fuin on himself prior to the fight. You never told me, he said, pausing to catch his breath. Your other hand has a technique hidden as well, the same as your previous teammate, right? Dosu attempted to sit up but discovered the hard way, a severe cramp in his neck, that he was unable to do so. But he suppressed a yelp of agony. The former Sound.Nin could only stare up at the sky and say, not really much of a teammate. His name was Zaku and he was a fool. He was really that exhausted. With a hint of irritation, the blonde said, we should get moving. He was never one to call off a training session or spar. He didn't realize Dosu wasn't well enough to be moving around yet, so he said, let's go, Dosu. Hand me a soldier pill. 2 weeks from now is when the Chunin exams would begin. Shinobi from other villages had already begun to enter Kumo through the gates. In a letter that Naruto had received, his Hokage had granted permission for 3 of his team members to take part, should he so choose, apart from Tayuya, who was still, sort of on probation. It appears that the teams of Kurenai, Asuma, Kakashi, and Guy have been entered. This time, Konoha was permitted to enter 6 teams. So far, only 4 have been submitted. After discussing it with his group, they were all naturally interested in becoming Chunins. In the end, Jan, Ken, Pon was everything. In order to have a strong candidate for the Chunin exam, Naruto had already made the decision to enter Gaara. Since everyone has agreed that a girl should be entered as well, Dosu defeated Konkaru with a rock to a scissor. Gaara, Dosu, and Tamari from Team Naruto would therefore participate in the Chunin exams. Fancy seeing you here. Hearing his voice, Naruto was leaning against the wall across from the Raikage's office entrance. Kakashi. Sensei. Since he had Fuin Bunshin on patrol everywhere, he could naturally tell when Team Kakashi entered Kumo. Trying to sound serious, he said, it's been a while. Kakashi just grinned and walked over to his old pupil. You have a meeting with Raikage, Sama? The Jinchuriki raised a pom-pom. We all do. I have my own team in this Chunin exams, so I expect the other Junin from Konoha here at any time. The copycat said, you're not a Junin. With a sheepish smile, Naruto nervously scratched his head. I may not be in Konoha, but they dubbed me Junin here in Kumo. They did? He shrugged at Kakashi. Yeah, it's a long story, here's the rest. As he was about to speak, Yuhi Kurenai, Maeda Gai, Sarutobi Asuma, Shiranui Genma, and Mitarashi Anko appeared around the bend. For the time being, their subordinates were residing in their makeshift residence. Who's the brat? Though he didn't really know her, Naruto remembered the purple-haired Dango chewing woman from the Chunin exams in Konoha and gave her a curious look as she approached the two of them. This is my former student, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto was a little taken aback by Anko's seeming lack of surprise. Why ask the question when she already knew who I was? Anko stopped in front of him and said, "Why are you wearing a Kumo Junin uniform, brat?" Her eyes were oddly menacing. Without altering his slanting posture, Naruto responded coolly, he had bought new clothes, but they were all currently dirty. I ran out of clothes. I didn't know I'd be staying here for such a long time. Asuma asked, "Why did they give you a Junin uniform, Naruto?" and simultaneously offered Kakashi a cigarette. The imitation turned down. Without missing a beat, Naruto said, "Because they somehow got this idea in their head I'm actually a Junin." Anko moved away from him to lean next to him against the same wall, relieved. "You guys are all early. Antsy, huh?" Anko snapped back, "Someone thinks he's a big shot now, huh?" When she said that, her smile was a little too sinister for Naruto's liking. Approaching them, a tanned, gray-haired woman said, "You guys should be quiet." Her face was framed by loose hair that was worn in a bun. Rakage. Sama doesn't like noise. Astonishing the Junin in attendance, Naruto ventured to laugh at the comment. The gray-haired woman gave him a brief smile as if it had never been there in the first place and said, "Mind your manners, Naruto." That's when they noticed the desk by the Rakage's office doors. Actually, that was her desk. Before, it had been deserted. Looks like he's becoming friendly with Kumo, Kakashi speculated as Naruto approached the person who appeared to be the Rakage's helper. Mabui-chan. How long's he going to take doing sit-ups in there? Mabui became enraged at Naruto and all the Konoha Junin went silent. "Be quiet, he can hear you, Naruto." "Good," he exclaimed, and a door slammed into Naruto. Stood outside his office doorway, his arms folded, saying, "Naruto, shut up and get in here already. I've been waiting for hours." The doors had vanished. The Cloud leader appeared to be as strong as before. His large, menacing appearance warned the others not to mess with him. Unsurprisingly, Naruto was not intimidated, asking, "You're a poor cage, eh? Why aren't you wearing your robe?" Admittedly, the others were perplexed as to why the Rakage was the only one wearing pants. Even his shoes were bare. Naruto became immobile after a tiny lightning strike. As he gestured for the others to come into his office, A gave the command, "Be quiet." He was just doing sit-ups, but he wouldn't tell them that. I didn't know Konoha.nin were so punctual. Kakashi caught everyone in Konoha's attention. Looking at Naruto, Kurenai answered, "Most of us are." "Is he?" A grinned toothily and said, "Brad'll be fine. Takes a few seconds, usually. Have to know somehow if he isn't actually a damned cage bunshin. Let's talk Chunin exams. I wish to borrow one of your own for the third test." "Hey, it's Naruto." Shikamaru looked up from the ground, winking at Ino's constant loud voice. The Nara observed that Naruto wasn't alone since a Kumo Chunin was strolling beside him. What a drag. If Hokage Sama sees him in Kumo uniform he'll be in trouble, the Nara said. Shoji called out, "Naruto," to catch his attention. The shops were closing, so they were currently strolling through a moderately busy street. It was getting almost nighttime now. "Over here." With a knowing smile on his face, the blonde Chunin walked up to the three genin and asked, "Shoji? So, you're going for Chunin again?" Narrowing her eyes at Naruto and the girl beside him, Ino said, "I had to drag these two slackers along." She extended her hand, and Naruto accepted it with pleasure. "I never did congratulate you, did I?" she asked. "How's it feel, being Chunin?" Naruto shrugged and gestured with his thumb to the girl seated next to him, saying, "Not that different. This is Samui, also a Chunin." Samui. These are Nara Shikamaru, Akamichi Choji and Yamanaka Ino. With everyone shaking their heads and introducing themselves, Ino gave Naruto a questioning glance. He's come a long way from being the loudmouth he once was. He appears more adult. Who would have thought that the class clown, before all of us, would turn into Chunin? Recalling the Chunin exam matches in Konoha, she was forced to acknowledge that Naruto was deserving of the title. Samui's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Naruto told me his own team is also participating in the Chunin exams. I expect good things from them." Ino exclaimed, "Huh, We'll blow your team away, Naruto, right away. When Shikamaru asked, your team? You have a team? Ino was forced to acknowledge that her initial response should have been more along those lines. Yeah, I have a team of 5 genin. 3 of them are also in the exams. You better watch your back, they're really good. Naruto was somewhat boastful. The group's Akamichi questioned, so, you're a Chunin, but you have your own team? May I inquire why you're donning a Kumo uniform, Naruto? Ino inquired, observing him closely. I detest to say it, but they appear more sophisticated than Konoha uniforms. It seems like I ran out of my own clothes due to training, the fair-haired Chunin said, slightly embarrassed as he scratched the back of his head. This outfit lacked every Fuinjutsu seal he used in his regular attire. He wasn't convinced. One never knew if these items could be tracked down. You two on a date? After exchanging glances, Naruto and Samui turned their attention back to Ino. It was Samui who responded, no, we're not. Just like with you, we just walked into each other. Coincidentally, we're both looking for a place to have dinner. Coincidental. Ino scoffed before glaring at the slightly older girl who, much to her dismay, had very developed areas. Coincidentally, we are also looking for a place to eat. Somehow, Ino was affected by Samui's icy attitude and said, we'd best find somewhere then. Samui-san, you said you knew a good ramen show. Naruto, we're not having ramen, yelled Ino. The Yamanaka, walking behind, couldn't help but notice the changes Naruto had undergone. Well, at least some things don't change. Guy really seems like a good shinobi now. Compared to the last time she had seen him, his hair was much longer. It would have been easy to wear it in a ponytail, but he chose not to, leaving a mass of blonde hair all over his face. Most likely, the Hite.8 prevented all of the blows from going near his eyes. Along with growing significantly in height, he was now the same height as Shikamaru, who was taller than she was. Naruto was no longer a short shrimp. Samui was about Naruto's height, if a little bit shorter, as they walked side by side. She overheard Choji ask Naruto, what are you doing in Kumo, Naruto? It's a long story, I'll tell during dinner. His closest companion was consuming food with all of his might in his own idyllic little world. He should have known that there was another barbecue joint. Shikamaru was picking away at his own food at a much slower pace, engaging in some small talk with those around him, but, as usual, he was mainly observing. As usual, Ino was also the one talking the most. Shikamaru had a talent for blocking out annoying sounds, so we went on a mission with Team 8, you know, with Hinata, Kiba, and Shino. Man, Kiba's such a prick. Anyhow, Ino was discussing something he had heard previously. How Kiba harbored resentment toward her because she had defeated him in the Chunin exams. If he had given it some thought, he might have thought it humorous. He didn't. He heard Naruto say, Team 8, huh? I think Shino's good. I wish I could always stay as calm as he is. Shikamaru narrowed his eyes a little at his own food as a result. Naruto's come a long way if he can even acknowledge his own shortcomings without feeling guilty. Naruto, why are you here? You've been gone for a while, about 4 months, Ino asked, smiling at him before reaching for her own plate of meat. Konoha's pretty quiet these days. The man with the blonde hair smiled back, letting Samui to his right reach for the salt. I've been here for almost 3 months, actually. Hokage. Sama gave me permission to run missions from Kumo for the time being. Raikage. Sama didn't mind. Right, Samui? The Kumo.nin chewed on a piece of food and nodded her head, her expression unaffected. She gulped it down and turned to face the Konoha.nin in front of her. Raikage. Sama has allowed Naruto and his team to join missions with our own team. They do not get paid. Or rather, Kumo does not pay them. Cutting a piece of meat in half on his plate, Naruto groaned. Yeah, and it's all boring missions too. Mostly escort and retrieval. We haven't had any real action for weeks. Weeks? So, approximately a month ago, he did engage in real action? Shikamaru deciphered the hidden meaning. He appears to be unmonitored by the Chunin accompanying him, so is he allowed to move around unhindered here as well? The young Nara eventually finished his meal and said, how can your team enter the Chunin exams, Naruto? No offense, but they all haven't been Konoha.nin for a very long time. Before answering, the lone Konoha Chunin at the table quickly dabbed at his mouth with a handkerchief. You're right, they haven't. But Hokage. Sama did give me permission to enter them. That's all I know, and I do have faith in my subordinates. He continued to have trouble with the phrase. I trust them, too. I take it that Sabaku no Gara is taking this exam? Shikamaru asked. Naruto beamed at Nara. The blonde and Shikamaru were not really friends at the time, even though she knew they would grow close in the future. A gleam of mischief danced over his orbs as he said, "Yeah, he's in. But he's not the only one you should worry about. The others are just as dangerous. But it seems you know who's in my team." The blonde nodded, and the Nara had to admit that she was growing more astute. Kinuta Dosu and the Sabaku 3. Correct, but there's another one. I'll let you find out for yourself who the final member of my team is. So you have 5 genin working under you? Ino responded. That's pretty cool, Naruto. Although Shikamaru was unaware of the additional member, he realized it was unlikely he would find out who it was. So who are the other 2 you're entering? Dosu, Gaara, and Tamari, was Naruto's sincere response. He saw no harm in informing Shikamaru. I'll warn my team about you, you know? They'll be prepared for your skills. A good captain prepares his team. The blonde from Team 10 asked right away, what about us? We're your comrades too, right? Tell us about their skills. Rather than Naruto, Shikamaru responded. He then tipped his head, turned to face Naruto, and let out an agitated sigh. We already know, Ino. They've all participated in the previous exam, remember? He said. It's a troublesome team, though, sound, sand and wind. Ho, you're good, Shikamaru. But the Nara was lost in contemplation. We must avoid that team if the Chunin exams in Kumo are the same as those in Konoha. The following day, Naruto was called upon by Kakashi using a torn piece of paper that Kankuro had given him. Yo. The fact that Naruto could approach him covertly these days didn't surprise Kakashi. Chakra signature sensing and Hiraishin, Naruto? All that on your day off? It would drain a fair amount of one's chakra reserves, but happily, Naruto was a Jinchuriki. You do know how Hiraishin works, right, Kakashi? Sensei. It takes a bit more than just sensing a chakra signature. Kakashi closed the little book he was reading and looked up at him. I know. You probably stuck some Fuin seal on me, huh? Looking around the small park Kakashi was in, the blonde explained. A long time ago, during a spar, I used Oitsumeru on you. It was tricky, too, had to use several clones to pull it off without you noticing it. Are you slacking off, Kakashi? Sensei? Kakashi chuckled a little. Haha. No, I'm waiting for the others. Oh, I see, you've received another mission? With a single gesture of his hand, Kakashi instructed Naruto to keep quiet. We'll wait. Naruto realized that someone might be listening in. There's nowhere better for a private meeting than the open air. As time went on, Yuhi Kurenai, Sarutobi Isuma, Maeda Gai, Shiranui Genma, and Mitarashi Anko joined them, in that order. Naruto, could you perform an encrypted sound barrier? The lone Chunin in attendance blinked at his old instructor. How do you? The imitator interrupted him. Can you do it? Remaining somewhat surprised, he nodded. After a few intricate hand seals, he whispered, Kenpo. Madden. Zatai Fugen. Perhaps it's smart if. Again, Kakashi interrupted him. Kurenai's already on it. Knowing that they were surrounded by a potent genjutsu and a sound barrier, Kakashi felt free to speak. He heard Naruto ask, where's Guy? Looking around with Sharingan exposed, Kakashi said, he's watching our backs for anything that could disrupt our little meeting. Glancing around him, he looked for any strangeness. Feeling nothing, he began. The 7 of us have an extra mission during these Chunin exams. I will be your commanding officer. Now, I know Genma and Anko already have the mission to watch and protect the Hyuga, while Naruto has his infiltration mission still active and since yesterday a role in the second test of the Chunin exams. This mission therefore rests mainly on my, Guy's, Asuma's and Kurenai's shoulders. But should it be necessary, it is required of all of you to assist us at any time. He then glanced at Naruto. You will be anchor point for the entire duration of our stay in Kumo. Because you know the Hiraishin. When Kakashi abruptly produced a few Hiraishin kunai, Naruto was astounded. Can you still work with these? Naruto scowled as Kakashi gave him the kunai string. These are the same seals, mostly, but give me a day to figure things out. With a lazy nod, Junin nodded. Now, on to our mission. Everyone looked at him intently. The retrieval of the body of Hyuga Hazashi. Naruto failed to understand. I don't have any active Fuin Bunshin at the moment, because when I create Fuin Bunshin, they also copy what I wear, but I've had them active for the entire first month I was here. I haven't come across anyone mentioning that name. Once more, Kakashi nodded. That's fine, I have a few ideas on where the body is kept. My first order to you is to make sure you fix your uniform, Naruto. Gaara was literally a raging tornado of sand as he practiced his sand transformation skills. It's a myth that changing your body doesn't hurt that much. Gaara would be able to more effectively withstand the agony of the sand transformation by practicing this. Dosu was sitting on a tree branch near his training location, far enough away to avoid being harmed by Gaara's extensive training, fiddling with a few of the metal gadgets on his body. His lips, right arm, right eye, left hand palm, chest, and insides of his ears were all metallic. He was now feeling around the inside of his right arm, having learned enough to make some minor corrections. This could be a smaller item. Hey, yo. Time froze. When the sand tornado that was Gaara had completely subsided, Dosu sat motionless to see a wide-eyed Gaara. These two found Kurabi's presence to be really bothersome. Not only was Kurabi rapping and dancing out of time, but he was also, without a doubt, stronger than them. It annoyed them both, but a little more than a lot. Gaara materialized instantly, allowing the wind to carry him a great distance. Kurabi turned to face Dosu as he watched the sand scatter, but all he saw was an empty tree branch. He was tempted to pursue the mummy. Like Shinobi, but he became aware that there were footsteps all around him. With his right arm raised to the sky, the eight-tailed Jinchuriki exclaimed, "Damn slackers be lazy, with me they ought to go crazy. Kurabi is amazing, you should be appraising. Sensei, why did we come here?" It was then that Kurabi appeared to notice his three students. "You guys are late," Kurabi says it straight. Once more, Karui spoke up. "Shut up, he's a bit weird." Tayuya unexpectedly entered the kitchen where Tamari was occupied preparing a meal. She detested cooking and couldn't give a damn if anyone enjoyed what she made. However, she agreed to alternate between Gaara and Kankuro. Dosu was still away training with Gaara, and Naruto was involved in some sort of meeting. She would be having dinner with Kankuro tonight along with Tayuya. Tamari questioned, "Who's weird?" while using a spoon to sample the soup she was boiling. With a close eye on the spoon Tamari was holding and a determination to keep it away from the soup, the redhead asked, "Naruto, how can such an aloof person be our captain?" She threw the spoon into the zinc before deciding to add some salt to the soup. "Aloof? He acts all happy. Go. Lucky, but that's all bullshit. You haven't seen him in a serious fight like I have. I was there when he defeated that guy called Kimimaro. Before that, he defeated Asuna Junin with one hit. You'll see, eventually, just who he is. That kid's strong, I mean, we're both his senior, we should be giving him orders." Before leaving the kitchen, Tamari shrugged and said, "Maybe, maybe not." She then noticed her brother fiddling with a new metal puppet. "Kankuro, stop playing with your toys and set the table." Kankuro shot a sardonic glance. He was alone himself in his training, honing his latest form of jutsu when he felt the presence of another person. "I've probably been there for a while, so I need to work on not getting caught off guard. Fortunately, I haven't used any revealing jutsu." Naruto sensed the shinobi in the tree, so he stopped what he was doing and faced it. "What's up?" Mitarashi Anko leapt down, a cunning smirk on her face, surprising him. "I'm in for a bit of a spar, kid. You up for a battle of tag?" "Do you want to play tag?" the blonde asked, gazing through Anko with a blank expression. "You run, I throw kunai. You stop, I kick your ass," she said. He bowed briefly and said, "No thanks, Anko-san. I was just heading home." After using Shunshin to get behind him, Anko was taken aback to discover that Naruto had done the same almost immediately to get behind her. "Impressive, brat. You're not going to just let me go, huh? I kinda have a busy schedule, you know?" Anko was happy that he knew when to say no to a question. "You have something better to do than hang out with me." When she was about to strike him with the kunai, he was still standing behind her. But as she turned, Naruto was there again, standing behind her. Naruto had to admit that her pout was quite adorable. "You're fast. That's really boring." As he tried to figure out how to get out of the strange situation he was in, Naruto thought, "If we spar and I don't hold back, she'll tell that old man just how strong I really am. I feel like she's going to notice if I hold back, and then she's going to make me push harder. That's not cool." He blinked and promptly decided not to steal that exact line from Samui. Anko then began to perform hand seals. "Shit on a stick," growled Naruto. A lazy drawl came from a guy standing in front of a group of boisterous genin, saying, "I want you all quiet." Darui really hoped they didn't hear him so he could just end this Chunin exam this instant. "If you won't be quiet in 5 seconds, you will be disqualified." Regretfully, a few individuals did hear and they spread the word. With a heavy sigh, he closed his eyes and communicated to his audience that he did not want to be here. His voice actually made you want to go to sleep. I assume you all expect to become Chunin, he said. Ino poked Shikamaru in the ribs in the crowd, inquiring as to their relationship. Sai was sitting on the ground beside Sasuke, who was leaning against a wall somewhere in the back. Sakura stood in front of them, paying close attention. Knowing that Hinata and Shino were watching the proctor's story, Kiba stood at the front, observing the competition. 10. 10 was keeping Lee quiet because he was always the first to scream and cry out. It appeared as though Neji wanted to use Kaden in the packed room. The man said, "But that won't happen." Without grinning. This was no jest. The first test is a battle. Only one member of your team is allowed to partake in this battle. You have 5 minutes to decide which of you will be taking this test. That one member is responsible for your team's advance to the second test of the Chunin exam. Choose wisely. Even though Gaara was clearly the more skilled player on their three-person team, Temari and Dosu weren't weaklings either. When Gaara turned to face them, they both expected him to threaten them, but instead, they were shocked to hear him say, "Rock, paper, scissors?" Darui forced himself not to laugh as he studied the groups of blabbering genin in front of him. He never did specify the nature of the battle that would take place. Kinuta Dosu stepped forward, smiling behind his mask. With paper to rocks, he had defeated Temari and Gaara as well. Winning this first test battle was all that remained to be done. Darui drooled and said, "Looks like everyone has decided. All right, the rest of you stays in this classroom. Those who represent their team, follow me." Part of the people in the room left, and Gaara and Temari exchanged a look with one another. Temari asked her brother, "Where do you think they're going?" "Daisen no mi." Gaara murmured as a sand-filled eye lingered near him. The hovering third eye flew out the window, searching for their teammate, saying, "I will keep an eye on Dosu." Everything was quiet in the classroom until Darui reappeared out of nowhere. "I'll go ahead and assume you've chosen the strongest member of your team to represent you." Not at all. Sakura's eyes grew wide at the cheesy ploy. Sasuke had insisted on fighting from her team. Fortunately, though Sai was reluctant to acknowledge it, she was more powerful than Sasuke. Darui was thus mistaken about her squad. She noticed that Gaara, another member of Naruto's team, was still there out of the corner of her eye. So there was no problem for their team either. The smarter ones might have figured out that the one sent away will not be participating in this first test. No, one of the two left from your team here will be chosen to fight a member from the other team, in this classroom. To make matters worse, there will be rules to this battle. Darui looked to see if he had everyone's attention. He had kept his eyes closed the entire time. After confirmation, he went on. Everyone turned to see a large classroom filled with tables and chairs. 1. I will decide who fights who. 2. You are not allowed to wreck anything in this room. If you do, you will lose instantly. The classroom, which they had previously thought to be large, is now thought to be too small for a serious altercation. And 3. You're not allowed to use chakra to enhance your movements. So no sticking to the walls or ceiling. Darui lowered his arms. It also prohibits using shunshin or increasing your speed, but I doubt any of these brats are capable of doing that. Okay, first up. He reached for a list of every genin who was there. The names of those who had already left the room were crossed out by him. He was nodded at by Ino and Ichija, a boy with short green hair and a slight tan. Konoha.nin Yamanaka Ino versus Kumo.nin Yukiriki Ichija. Please confirm you know the rules. Very well. Whenever you're ready. Temari noticed Gaara's growing smile, which he covered with a hand over his mouth. What's so funny, Gaara? Dosu's going to be disappointed when he finds out he's not fighting at all. His paper to our rock was actually his loss. Though she had to stifle a laugh, Temari mimicked Gaara's movements. Zetsu has come with rather disturbing news. They had not been this close as a group for quite some time. Uchiha Itachi had his Sharingan active as usual as he observed the other Akatsuki members. Except for Pain, who channeled everyone else's presence through a unique jutsu, nobody was truly present. Zetsu was there, his form instantly recognizable. Nothing truly escaped the Venus flytrap shinobi's eyes and ears, which covered the entire territory. He was the best spy there was. Chakra was still bouncing off Kisame like it was nothing, despite the image Pain had given him for this meeting. The man who resembled a shark couldn't help but smile. Like he always did, Hidan radiated frustration as he knelt on top of one of the ceiling statue's fingers. Itachi showed no concern. Kakuzu appeared to be toting a suitcase over his shoulder, most likely containing cash from a previous bounty. Itachi admired Kakuzu because he was a straightforward man. That and the fact that he has most likely lived longer than anyone else here. Unexpectedly, Conan, who was usually quite quiet, was not physically present when she stood close to Pain. She had a stoic shape. Itachi thought its shape resembled his own. Seated atop a finger of the statue, Deidara appeared to be carefree. Rather, it appeared that he was occupied with something manual. It appeared that Pain's jutsu could be used without the need to be totally still or in a meditation state. Unsurprisingly, Sasori was concealed in his puppet, Hiriko, and close to Deidara. Thus, Sasori was completely unreadable. Tobi was unable to remain motionless and was bouncing up and down on the finger. Yet Itachi was aware of the true nature of the happy exterior. Having completed these observations in less than 2 seconds, the same amount of time as Pain's pause, he turned back to face Pain. Itachi and Kisame, while faced with 3 Jinchuriki, came back with none. This was understandable, as the Raikage and Jiraiya Sama were both present. Though the Uchiha never allowed his gaze to narrow, he could not help but wonder why Pain treated Jiraiya with such respect. Some members snorted a few times, but that was to be expected. After all, there were a few haughty people in Akatsuki. And it is no easy feat facing 3 Jinchuriki at the same time. I'll have to admit you did admirable getting away. Pain went on. But you did give them a good warning. Taking out 2 Jinchuriki in a cage in seconds left them with a good impression on how strong the Akatsuki is. Kisame complained, still not pleased with his meager participation in the altercation, and he did it all by himself, too. He glared briefly at both Hidan and Kakuzu, but it swam away from his face. About a month later, both Hidan and Kakuzu came face to face with the Kyuubi and the Nibi Jinchuriki. While the Nibi Jinchuriki is a Junin, the Kyuubi one is but a Chunin. Someone from Akatsuki should have no trouble with a Junin and a Chunin. But Jinchuriki can be tricky to deal with. Itachi. Itachi lifted his head a little. Did you fight the Kyuubi Jinchuriki? No, I used Tsukiyomi, as both the Kyuubi and the Shukaku Jinchuriki seemed about to transform. I didn't need chaos. He clarified. He had previously shared this with Pain, but not in a full meeting. At that time, he hadn't even told anyone that using the Shoraizu had left him seeing only blackness. It's bothersome if they can both transform. The Shukaku Jinchuriki has become a Konoha.nin. Sanagakure is very weak at the moment and at war with Konoha. Perhaps, we can join Suna. In disguise, we can deal several blows to Konoha, which seems to be growing too strong lately. The same applies to Kumogakure. There's talk of a possible alliance between the two, but I think that won't happen, considering certain happenings in the past. Pain took his eyes off Itachi. Sasori, Deidara, your objective will be the one. Tail. Bring him in. Hidan and Kakuzu, bring in the 2. Tail. The rest will focus on missions from Tsuchigakure and on bounties. Dismissed. He didn't need to explain that, since both the 1. Tail and the 2. Tail were in Kumo. This implied that Sasori, Deidara, Hidan, and Kakuzu were meant to cooperate. No, the leader never made the obvious point. Retrograde, he paused to unfold a scroll on the floor and gestured for his listener to take a seat, saying, it is not possible for you to utilize all elements. But I've found a way to switch body affinity. With it, you are able to use all elements, just not at the same time. The Fuinjutsu required for this takes a few seconds to activate, and a few more for your body to adjust. Hence the Kage Bunshin distraction. There are 5 elements. I can use Doden and Fuden, but I have to switch twice, because my body can only use 2 elements, right? Naruto the Elder turned to face Naruto the Younger. Right now, this switch is easily modifiable. Your body is young, indeed unable to hold more than 2 elements. But you're going to mature and our limit is 3 elements. I'll tell you now, the third and final element your body can use is Suiden. You are completely unable to mold chakra into a Kaden or Raiden element, ever. But thanks to this switch, your entire chakra system can alter. For now, this Fuinjutsu allows for 2 switches. One so your body is attuned to Kaden and Raiden and the other for Suiden. Your original is already Fuden and Doden. He took the scroll off of its wrapping and began pointing at various symbols. Study all of this, Naruto. I want you to be able to draw this blindly. Fuinjutsu will save everything in the end. You have to know all of this, and more. Finish the flashback. He was not understanding. He disliked not being able to understand. He couldn't resist discussing the recent events as he strolled alongside his designated companion. It's true that his Shoraizu didn't provide him with any specific information, but he found it difficult to understand that he would be unconscious. That day, when the Shukaku and Kyuubi Jinchuriki had appeared before him, he was left perplexed when all he saw was darkness. And now that Hidan and Kakuzu had only received such a rough treatment from the Nibi and Kyuubi Jinchuriki, he couldn't help but think his Shoraizu hadn't been lying that day. It had never lied to him before, of course, but it intrigued him to think that the Genin Jinchuriki Sabaku no Gaara and the Chunin Jinchuriki Uzumaki Naruto could make him feel this way. Naruto and Gaara were both barely out of high school. He was certain they would only become more troublesome, much more troublesome, if they could control that much chakra from their Biju at that age. He was usually right in his assumptions, but should he tell Pain or Madara about this suspicion? Maybe he could use this knowledge for his own plans instead. Yes, maybe his plan needs to be reworked. So, what should we do? Itachi gave Kisame a quick glance before glancing back, the usual. That meant they would wait for some bounty money to arrive before ambushing some unlucky team from Kumo, Suna, Tsuchi, or Konoha. He observed the brief fights going on in front of him indifferently. Any fight would inevitably end in a fistfight. This was brought about by the rule that said you would be disqualified if you broke even one item, like a chair or a table. Ninjutsu was allowed, of course, but you would absolutely destroy something in the room if you missed. Gaara therefore anticipated cunning moves, but he couldn't help but scowl when one man began hurling a chair in the direction of his opponent, hoping that opponent would block and eventually shatter the chair. It would go without saying that the adversary would evade and the chair would smash into the wall. Bad strategy, really. Even though the examiner had said that a single genin could be removed from the exam, the team would still proceed, even with just one member. From Konoha Team 10, Yamanaka Ino advanced by sidestepping a ninjutsu, and Narashikamaru advanced by using his shadow to subdue his opponent and allowing her to use a kunai to scratch a table. It didn't surprise Gaara that there were no Suna teams present. Suna was presumably in the middle of a chaotic situation because they had lost their weapon, their Jinchuriki. When Inuzuka Kiba of Konoha Team 8 misjudged his own spinning Gatsuga and slightly damaged the wall, he was disqualified. Indeed, you were prohibited from causing any harm to anything within the room. It was Hinata who got a pass by swerving around the previously mentioned chair with ease. Sai, from Konoha Team 7, easily passed by taking out his opponent in less than 2 seconds. At that moment, Gaara had narrowed his eyes at his own efficiency. Being a real brute, Sakura simply smashed her opponent into the wall. She was fortunate that the examiner found that Sakura alone, not her opponent, had caused the wall damage in this case. Tamari had used a very basic food and ninjutsu from his own team, sending her opponent flying to the ceiling. Tamari had sent the girl straight into the classroom's one and only light, and Tamari passed and her opponent lost because she had damaged the light. Gaara was next in line. And in just 2 seconds flat, he had defeated his opponent with ease. He simply protected everything in the room with his sand before unleashing a massive wave of sand on his opponent. The examiner passed Gaara because his opponent was unconscious after observing that nothing was harmed by the wave, which was actually impossible because the wave essentially covered the entire room except for the participants who were present. They had been informed by the examiner that those who passed could spend the day at home. 2 days from now would be the next test. Even though there were still plenty of participants, Gaara had grown tired of watching these genin. Tamari and he decided to return home. That is, go home and make fun of Dosu. He was not shocked in the slightest to see the elderly man standing before him, summoning him, with binoculars clenched in his hands. Not at all surprised. What the hell? Where the hell am I? On his forehead, a tick appeared, but Naruto pushed it away. Jiraiya. Sama. He struggled to utter the words. He muttered under his breath, hentai. Sama sounds a lot better. Naruto? Jiraiya asked as he rose from his hiding place, the binoculars having, amazingly, vanished. Naruto surmised that Jiraiya probably had a Fuin seal somewhere that could call forth binoculars. The priorities some people really had. Where are we? You summoned me here. He let out a sigh to begin. He would always teleport to Wave to talk about important things, saying, yeah, we're in Wave. He enjoyed the solitude of these forests, the place where he had first met Haku. He poured chakra into one of his vest pockets to summon a scroll. I want to talk to you about something important, but before I do, I want your promise that this stays between you and my team. I want you to promise me you won't tell this to Hokage. Sama either. He preferred to refer to his Chunin outfit as Chunin Fuin outfit. He was wearing it. Just keep it quiet. He knelt down, spread the scroll on the floor, and gave Jiraiya a cold look. You promise me by blood. Jiraiya first glanced at Naruto, then at the scroll. He could tell right away that Naruto was taking things seriously, and he would too. What does this scroll do? Jiraiya noticed a brief sad moment in Naruto's gaze. I call this the promise scroll. Anyone who makes a promise to me, will do so by blood. By combining Fuinjutsu with blood, the most intricate things are possible. You notice that the scroll is empty, right? Jiraiya gave a nod. Everyone on my team has made a promise to never betray Konoha and never betray the team. A blood promise. And they did so in this scroll. The way this works is very similar to the Buseiken, Oitsumeru no Jutsu. The title of this scroll is Kesho Jikimono. The blood scroll. He took a moment to breathe. With your blood combined with your chakra, I've made this Fuinjutsu able to keep track of your active blood. Jiraiya swallowed, still not quite getting it, and scowled. In other words, by use of different Fuin skills, I am able to track you down when you are lying, are nervous, are excited, are anxious, are scared, when you are dying and when you are breaking this particular promise. You see here that I can only use this Fuinjutsu after I've told you what I want to tell you, because blood changes by the seconds. Jiraiya said, quite seriously, this sounds impossible. You can't monitor someone's blood pressure all the time by use of Fuinjutsu. The blonde one smiled. Exactly, not all the time. Everyone's blood is unique. This blood scroll has dozens of Fuin seals inscribed in it. Every single one allowing for different results. One dominant Fuin seal ascertains a constant, but very thin connection between the blood in the scroll and the blood in your body. A smaller, but by no means small, Fuin seal only responds to the breaking of the promise. Another Fuin seal will respond when you are, for example, lying. But each separate Fuin seal requires at least a drop of blood. The one I request of you, requires 16, as it is quite difficult to detect the change in blood flow when someone is breaking a promise. How do you know such advanced Fuinjutsu, Naruto? Jiraiya asked, squinting his eyes at the son of one of his former students. Not even the fourth was as knowledgeable about Fuinjutsu as he was. I will tell you if you promise me you will give me 16 drops of your blood and pour a considerable amount of your chakra into this scroll, was the immediate response. Jiraiya considered it. Even though it wasn't his top concern, old man Sarutobi was interested in finding out how strong Naruto truly was following the Chunin exams in Konoha. Even so, the Toad Sage was aware that the third had assigned Kakashi and Enko the task of discovering this information as soon as possible. It wasn't an issue for him. He could take care of keeping the child's secrets, just that, secrets. In addition, he owed him. After all, he was his godfather. He smiled at how grown up Naruto appeared, his hands resting on the scroll on the floor as he raised an expectant, otherworldly serious gaze toward him. All right, Naruto. I promise that what you tell me will stay between us. For a brief moment, the two Chunin gave Jiraiya some thought. A promise means a lot to me, Jiraiya. Sama. I want you to promise me, literally, that you'll give me 16 drops of blood in your chakra before I start talking. Jiraiya snorted with laughter. God, you're impossible. He was relieved to see a ghost of a smile on Naruto's face, but it wandered because Naruto was in business mode. You're just like your father. I promise you will have 16 drops of my blood and some of my chakra as soon as you want it. Satisfied, the boy nodded his head. I suppose a considerable amount of chakra is still just some to a chakra freak like you. But that was the truth. Shikamaru, for instance, would likely become somewhat worn out from the amount of chakra required for this. He was a different story from Jiraiya. Alright then. You're going to have to brace yourself, Jiraiya. Sama. For this tale will be somewhat hard to believe. Give it to me straight, Naruto. I'm old and I have seen a lot. This can't be anything too weird. Naruto grinned while shaking his head and then resumed his speech. At this point, Jiraiya would undoubtedly laugh at him and say, Madden ninjutsu. There are only a few of them, right? Well, let's just say I've had a visit from myself, from the future. Time. Travel. How? He went on, ignoring Naruto's poor assessment of Jiraiya. It's a modified Hiraishin by use of blood and Fuinjutsu and blood experiments. Time. Travel was made possible by medic.nin. By creating a younger version of his own blood and his own blood circulation, my future self was able to get a detailed version of me in the past. And then, he had to create a combination of a Kesshou Fuin seal and the Hiraishin seal. The result was risky time. Travel, but time. Travel nonetheless. Jiraiya covered his chin with his fist. By that explanation, shouldn't you also be able to create an older version of your own blood? You could travel to the future? He was shocked that Jiraiya thought Jiraiya was telling the truth. It doesn't matter. To be able to modify blood on that level, my future self told me that it was near impossible even in the future. Jiraiya was staring at him. The only way to speed that up is for the average medic.nin to evolve. The hermit asked with a hint of distaste. You say medic.nin, but don't you mean scientist? As Orochimaru abruptly appeared in his thoughts. Maybe a real medic.nin is also a little bit of a scientist, the blonde speculatively said. Anyway, you're not even slightly surprised when I say my future self visited me? Jiraiya said slowly, I am. But I believe you. I'm guessing your future self is quite the Fuinjutsu specialist? The best. Respect filled Naruto's gaze. Even though he was me, I considered him as a sort of father. He was me, but not really, you know? With genuine curiosity, Jiraiya asked, so he taught you everything he knows? So you know a lot of Fuinjutsu skills? For some reason, Jiraiya reminded him of his future self. Yeah, he taught me a lot. He was saddened by the thought of his future self passing away right before his eyes. Jiraiya missed the dejected looks, which was something Naruto was grateful for. So, show me then, you're strong, aren't you? Now that I know, you don't have to hold back anymore. You're right. Excitement swept Naruto's melancholy from his mind. You're Jiraiya Sama, one of the legendary ninjas. I can go all out against you. Jiraiya had to back off after Naruto made that remark and did the move that caused him to rise from the ground. Senjutsu! He exclaimed, startled to see the indications of Senjutsu in Naruto's eyes. Why don't you know? With confidence, Naruto nodded his head. Yeah, I've perfected the style completely. It only takes me 1 second to activate. 1 second of complete tranquility allows for the wielding of the toad style. Jiraiya raised his hand and said, wait. He realized now how dangerous Naruto was. Senjutsu posed a serious risk. In this state, he was nearly impossible to defeat. "Why?" was his intended response, but in light of this evidence, he had to settle for yelling, how can you still look so normal, while pointing to Naruto's still, normal features. Normal? As Jiraiya saw the person sitting cross-legged on the ground, he complained, give me a few minutes of silence, please. It takes me a bit longer to enter Senjutsu mode. As the legendary Toad Hermit appeared annoyed, Naruto laughed and observed. The minutes ticked by, and he was still shocked by Jiraiya's transformation. Then he gave a hearty laugh. As he danced through the streets of Kumogakure, B-rapped, he ain't near, he ain't here. Where the hell did he go, that 9? Wonder where he went and if he's fine. He should bumping fists with B, but instead he's out, completely, free. Kurabi realized after that final remark that Konoha had just allowed its Jinchuriki to travel to other villages in this manner. He gave up dancing. He had just realized this. Though he didn't usually pout, he was unable to resist. Naruto and Gaara were both Jinchuriki from Konoha. He was always trapped in Kumo, but they were free to move around. He had an idea. Maybe Naruto could teach him how to use the Hiraishin. Hiraishin signified liberation. However, even he was aware that shinobi do not simply give up their own jutsu. Particularly one like Hiraishin. He also understood that in order to be able to do it, he needed to be proficient in Fuinjutsu. And not just any kind of jujutsu either, instead, highly developed jujutsu. And here he was, sitting in the middle of a fairly busy street, his arms encircling each other. Damn, yo. This shit's hard to figure out, I'll have to bow to him, no doubt. And the kid's not easy to read, not even with this killer beat. Behind his glasses, he blinked. Kurabi. Killer beat? Killer B has a killer beat. Oh yeah. Kurabi would occupy himself for a minimum of 4 hours upon realizing the two nearly identical terms. After that, the Hiraishin's thoughts would return. Holding himself against a large boulder, Jiraiya was panting profusely. Standing in front of him, holding himself above his knees, Naruto was exactly the same. What the hell? You're the strongest, Chunin, I've ever faced, kid. He exclaimed in between his pants, you should hear what I did to Orochimaru during those Chunin exams. I've been dying to tell someone. Jiraiya's and his toad modes had long since vanished. It had evolved into a full-fledged ninjutsu and taijutsu battle following the senjutsu battle. Naruto didn't want to reveal his Jinchuriki mode to Jiraiya just yet, even though he wasn't spent. Naruto had teleported the two of them to a mountainous region near Earth Country, but away from Iwagakure, prior to their fight. After all, he didn't want to destroy his beloved forest in Wave. When the fight was over, neither of them was upset that there was a clear winner. Jiraiya Sama. Naruto sat down on the rocky ground to tell the older man he was done sparring. To sit comfortably, he even had to remove a few rocks from under his ass. Telling you about that time. Travel jutsu and showing you my real strength weren't the only reasons I summoned you. Jiraiya sat in front of Naruto, letting out a final combination of a sigh and a groan in the hopes that it would stop him from panting. They weren't? One of the other reasons I summoned you is because I need to travel to the Land of Iron. I want to do this without my team, so these Chunin exams in Kumo are perfect. And the two who aren't participating, Tayuya and Konkaru, are currently taking easy missions from the Raikage, to be executed within Kumo. I need to pick something up in the Land of Iron, and to do so I have to gain the acknowledgement of a guy named Mifune. Jiraiya nodded and said, "Oh, old man Mifune, I know him well." As far as he could recall, Mifune was between 60.2 and 60. 4 years old, or roughly 10 years younger than Sarutobi Hiruzen. The age of Jiraiya was 51. You're going to have a hard time with that guy, he's a real piece of work, like a rock. Naruto had a resolve that was equally unwavering. The other and final reason I summoned you is because of a request. Jiraiya joked, another one? But it went unanswered. Akatsuki, I want to crush them. It was impossible to miss the brutality in Naruto's voice. I have to admit, if you hadn't just given me a very hard time, I would say you'd get squashed by even a single member, but I guess what you want isn't too impossible. I am training myself every day as hard as I can. I leave a clone in Kumo and go training at random places. Sometimes I take my team with me, sometimes I drop them off at separate places. I've taught all of them the Kage Bunshin, so they all have a shadow clone with their chakra signature in Kumo. We're all training as hard as we can and they know what I want. They now, as much as me, want to completely crush Akatsuki. He cocked his head. He said dryly, well, maybe Tayuya still isn't that into it yet. So what is your request, then? My squad, I intend for my team to become the best of the best. Able to take out the Akatsuki. I want you to be our leader. It's been ages since she's worried this much. She had been dying from the constant worry and stress that had been plaguing her for the past few days. It had been a week, and today was the first day she could finally sleep soundly. Shizune returned to stability. After taking one of Naruto's pills, Shizune experienced a drastic transformation that gave the impression that she had become the Raikage herself, given her chakra levels. It seems that the pills were made with the intention of temporarily raising your chakras to a higher level. It appeared to have taken your chakra supplies and generated as much chakra as one could for a full 3 days, perhaps even more. Tsunade wanted to spar with Shizune to see if she had changed in strength or speed, but she remained Shizune in chakra, with no change in attitude. And she was, by a good deal. Shizune had never pushed Tsunade back so forcefully. The equality in the spar scared her, but she could still handle her to some extent. The chakra surge subsided, and Shizune collapsed to the floor. Tsunade became agitated because she appeared to be a corpse. Of course, she wasn't dead, but she sure did look the part. Shizune was literally on the verge of death because the pill had depleted her chakra supply to the point where there was barely enough for 3 or 4 days. In a limited time, there was only one way to handle this. Combining her own Sozo Saisei with a chakra infusion. Her condition remained extremely critical until a few days ago. Tsunade only began to worry less yesterday. Thankfully, it was severe chakra exhaustion rather than a blood clot. However, the pill's effects were terrible even though their results were fantastic. She would need to figure out how to make something that could handle this kind of chakra depletion. Tsunade had no choice but to acknowledge her interest in developing a novel medication. However, she would beat the Naruto kid to a pulp if she ever saw him again for putting Shizune in that situation. She would then tend to him and carry on for several dozen times. But now was the time to investigate the manufacturing process of these pills in more detail. But she didn't think a child the size of Naruto would know. Did he not inform her that it was intended for Jinchuriki as well? She was certain that there was something strange about Naruto. We need more intel on the Kyuubi brat. What? Are you scared of him, yeah? Sasori trudged forward beside him, this time without his Hiriko puppet. Deidara, you shouldn't ever underestimate a Jinchuriki. Even 3-year-old Jinchuriki bite hard. Kakuzu is right, it doesn't hurt to know more about a Jinchuriki's skills. Every Jinchuriki, after all, is still a bit of a human. Hidan grumbled, this wouldn't be such a pain if we could just kill them, you know? We're going to kill them in the end anyway, right? Why not just drag their corpses back and be done with it? Deidara chuckled, are you an idiot? I know I don't really pay attention during those long-winded speeches Nagato gives us, but even I know the Jinchuriki have to be alive to be able to extract the demon out of them. Or did Nagato never mention that, and is it because I'm a genius that I know? Hidan pointed to the front and said, yeah, you're a genius, a girl genius. You freaking woman. Cut your hair already. What's that, you old geezer? Do all Jashin followers age fast or what? Deidara angrily retorted. Only old dudes have gray hair. Hidan yanked out his scythe angrily, saying, "Hey! The moment you insult Jashin is the moment you choose death." While Sasori was just carrying on with his perpetual poker face, Kakuzu answered, "Shut up, Hidan. Zetsu wants to talk." The dark Zetsu said, "Who? You knew I was here? Impressive. Even more impressive is the fact you know I wanted to say something." Kakuzu turned to Zetsu as he slowly emerged from a tree and said, "Obviously, I was talking to you when I said we need more intel on the Kyuubi brat." They had all already stopped walking, but Sasori didn't stop until Zetsu emerged. "Truthfully, me stating you want to talk is me demanding an answer from you." "I didn't know you were a censor.nin, Kakuzu?" Hidan asked, glaring at Deidara with a death glare before placing his scythe back on his back. Deidara merely rolled his eyes and replaced his handmouth with the clay. The member of Akatsuki wearing a mask declared, "I steal pumping hearts from shinobi," saying to Hidan, "It's only natural one of them was coincidentally a censor.nin." He seemed to be speaking to a young brat who was in need of very basic information. Actually, that was how he spoke to Hidan all the time. Zetsu's white half said, "The Kyuubi Jinchuriki is a true nuisance. Besides being able to sense me, I found out he possesses quite the bothersome jutsu." "You mean that chakra absorption skill?" Kakuzu questioned, piquing Sasori's curiosity. Deidara and Hidan seemed unconcerned. "No, this jutsu is far more dangerous, and this single technique put an end to the previous Great Shinobi War." "You don't mean?" Sasori had her suspicions confirmed by Dark Zetsu. "Yeah, the Hiraishin." Kakuzu began to move once more. He was aware of the Hiraishin, which allowed him to escape my thread dome. However, why wasn't it used more often? Does it consume too much of his stamina or chakra? Then his eyes narrowed. Was he reserving something? He was aware that the Kyuubi Jinchuriki was focused on him, so it wasn't shocking that Hidan had taken him by surprise at that moment. "Hold on a moment. Hidan, you hit that Kyuubi kid with your scythe. Do you still have his blood?" Hidan asked, "Are you stupid?" Almost immediately, and Kakuzu wanted to kill him for it. "That other kid with the sand, his sand somehow cleaned my scythe clean, annoying sand bastard. I'll kill him too, next time." "Sand?" asked Sasori again. "Sabaku no Gara, then. He's the current Shukaku Jinchuriki. Killing him is out of the question too." Hidan gave Sasori's back a scowl. "I'm beginning to hate this Akatsuki business." They had never seen Dosu act so pouty before. Gara and Tamari had conveyed their sincere apologies, but Tayuya had just laughed at the whole thing. Kankaru laughed further. "Well, at least you got an easy pass, right?" Dosu glared at Kankaru with one eye closed. He could easily leave a lasting sound jutsu in Kankaru's bedroom with his use of sounds. "What was it that you said? You want to have nightmares tonight? Sounds, after all, have a significant influence on your dreams while you are asleep. I'll let you dream about the worst things you can imagine." Yeah, whatever." Kankaru laughed even harder at the threat. He never thought Dosu would act so shallow. It was very funny. Gara had stopped smiling and said, "We all passed, that's what matters." After all, he found it difficult to laugh as easily as the others did. He was still getting the hang of the idea. What's even better is the fact no one knows how you really fight. Because of his bandages, Dosu responded with a concealed frown, "So they know how you fight now." Gara responded honestly as usual, saying, "No, I used minimum effort." Tamari said, "I only used one simple wind jutsu." Dosu said dryly, "So no one really knows how you two fight either." This negated Gara's previous argument and lifted his spirits. Even though he wanted to participate in the first test, it was over and done with. The first test changed completely nothing for us. He dissipated his disappointment. "Then I look forward to the next test. I will change my disappointment into extra vigor." Naruto burst into speech as he and Jiraiya were leaping through a snowstorm to get to the land of iron. We have a small problem, Jiraiya. Sama." The Toad Sage shaded his face with his hand from the spectacle, casting a sideways glance. He nervously scratched the back of his head and said, "I have been alerted by my Fuin Bunshin that my Kage Bunshin is on his way for my participation as special examiner for the second test of the Chunin exams. I kinda forgot about that." "So what are you saying?" "Well, before the commencement of the second test, I am supposed to meet up with the Raikage and he usually hits me once to make sure I'm not a shadow clone." Jiraiya had a realization. "Wait, you're telling me there's a chance you have to go back to Kumo? We're almost in the land of iron already?" He said, his head still scratching. "I'll be back as soon as possible. I'll just use Hiraishin to get to you. And about there being a chance I have to go back to Kumo. There's not a chance, it's really certain. He raised his eyebrows in regret to Jiraiya. My shadow clone just popped due to Raikage's shoulder bash. Jiraiya had never scowled more than she did at that moment, as Naruto disappeared in a flash of yellow. He roared into the irksome, chilly, and wet snow. The kid doesn't even know how boring the land of iron is. And then he lands me there for his own weird reasons. You owe me for this, Naruto. He did wonder why there were so many people in the office before he began his own summoning, his own Hiraishin. He wasn't even a little surprised to see a large number of Junin instructors, including the ones from Konoha, when he entered the Raikage's office through the wall opening that had shoulder bashed. What's going on, brat, you're late. As Naruto executed the Raikage's signature move, Iron Claw, Kurabi laughed. The Konoha Junin were all rather taken aback to see how well known the Raikage and Naruto were to one another. That's unexpected, Kakashi muttered. Darui whispered to the copy.cat, as they stood side by side. Rumor is the two raced each other to Suna and back, but they won't tell us who won. Kakashi interrupted himself, staring at the laughing blonde who was attempting to move the Raikage off of him, saying, surely, he couldn't. Raikage. Sama is the fastest shinobi in the lands, but he is the most surprising ninja. Impersonation. Raikage redirected his attention from berating Naruto toward the group. The next test of the Chunin exam is a race. Each individual genin group will have a chaser. You are the chasers. What do you mean by impersonation? Naruto knew the first test had been passed by his team. He looked around the room at the soon-to-be chasers and could tell with ease who else passed. Some Junin, like Darui, Kurabi, and Mabui, who did not have a genin team, were present. However, those who succeeded were Kumo Junin Shi, Hitaki Kakashi, Yuhi Kurenai, Sarutobi Asuma, Maeda Gai, and 6 other Kumo Junin, a grass Junin, and 4 Iwa Junin. A young woman who was one of the Iwa Junin kept glaring at him. He surmised that she was also only marginally older than him. The presence in the room was concluded by 3 Kiri Junin. Raikage laughed. Legendary shinobi. You are going to impersonate them and chase after a random genin team. The second test of the Chunin exams will be held in a very big forest. Only one team will enter at a time and they have 5 hours to reach the other side. One of you will enter the same forest only 5 minutes later and will do anything in your power to halt their movements. You are not to kill, only to restrict and slow down. You say not to kill, but we are allowed to fight them then? The Iwa Junin's female face was grinning viciously. Aside, recognizing the young woman. Yes, you're allowed to beat them. I expect a 3-man genin team to be wise enough to flee from a Junin. Kakashi remarked, but then, not all of them are 3-man teams anymore, are they? Guy endorsed this test, saying, all the more reason to flee. This was a mental and speed test. Recognize when to run and how quickly to run. Do you have suggestions on impersonations? I retorted, do you? Naruto smiled and flexed his knuckles, saying, I'll be Orochimaru. Any reason why I can only be one, though? The Raikage seemed very amused and said, by all means, if you think you can be more. How about, Hanzo, Jiraiya, Ginkaku, Kinkaku or any of the former Kage, take your pick. Smirking, the grass Junin said, I'll be Hanzo. Anyone could see the large scythe on his back and say, I have somewhat the same fighting style. Not wanting to see anyone else impersonate her father, Kakashi blurted out, I'll impersonate my father. Darui took Shi's place, saying, if you don't mind, I'll be the former Raikage. Shi unfortunately has a mission, I'll be taking his spot. Asuma Sarutobi said, I will go as my own father, then, and stepped forward. The god of shinobi, or the professor. It seems like I could be a natural fit for the Nidaime Mizukage, a strange sounding Kiri Junin said with a laugh. Then came from the other Kiri Junin, I'll be Yagura. The hand of Yuhi Kurenai was on her chin. All she needed to do was figure out how to send out genjutsu about her enormous strength. I think I will be impersonating Tsunade. 2 Kumo Junin volunteered, saying, we'll be Kinkaku and Kinkaku, though it'll be hard to impersonate those maniacs. A held up his hand to the 2 Junin and said, to be honest. The muscular man pointed at Naruto and said, it seems like only this blonde brat can pull off a believable imitation of those 2. Naruto scowled. Who are Kinkaku and Ginkaku? The day after that. These brats can move pretty quickly, Darui remarked while pursuing 3 Konoha genin in his Sandaime Raikage henge. The lone Chunin serving as a chaser in this test was the genin employed by Uzumaki Naruto. Thus, a promising Chunin. Do his subordinates have any promises for genin? With a sigh, He realized the group had picked him out and had picked up speed. Though their pace was fast Chunin, he had his eyes narrowed and said, "I was hoping for an easy break. I guess I'll need to move a little quicker then." He ran and jumped for a few minutes until he eventually made out their silhouette in the distance. Leading the way was a blonde girl with loose hair, part of which was pulled back into a ponytail, and a large fan strapped to her back. Quickly trailing behind her was a red-haired genin with an entirely neutral body language. Adjacent to him was a genin who leapt at the same speed, but with bandages covering his entire head and a gray outfit covering most of his body. Lazily sweeping over the small group, Darui tried to take in as much as he could before he had to face them. Darui had been too indolent to really pay attention to anything that was said, even though they were aware of every genin squad. This particular group even accompanied him back to Kumo from Konoha, but he didn't even know their names. He could only recall well-known names. Neither genin nor chunin were truly worth the trouble of recalling. Though she was the fastest of the three, the girl was arguably the weakest physically. If the seals on her fan meant anything, they pointed to food and ninjutsu and possibly a summon. The redhead moved way too smoothly. His movements suggested he was well above genin, but shinobi such as these had a tendency to lose sight of the little things when fighting. He could most likely take full advantage of his position as an impediment. The person with the bandage appeared quite unsettling. He was concealing too much. He was not even able to see his hands. One of these three, if he recalled right, wasn't also a Jinchuriki? Alright, not that it was significant. He battled B as well as Yugito and was able to handle himself fairly well against them. What was the true potential of a genin Jinchuriki? He picked up a lot of speed, closing the distance on them and preparing to give the bandaged one a back kick, but he stopped short when he heard an explosion near his right. He would most likely be forced into it. In fact, he noticed that the genin team continued to move away from him as he came to a stop on a branch far to the left. They don't give a damn about that explosion, he interrupted himself, failing to see what was to his right. That is unexpected, Darui muttered to himself. He looked up and thought, they can fake sounds, so he chose to follow them from above. However, I didn't anticipate using any ninjutsu myself. A thin layer of electricity encircled his body. He was shocked to hear a technique coming toward him as he leapt up to soar above the forest. He turned around in midair to avoid shurikens made of sand. Raiden ninjutsu, huh? Darui exclaimed as he landed atop a tree and peered up to see the red-haired genin floating atop a sand platform. You won't be stopping my team's movements, Raiden user. It appears that he is not aware of my transformation. That's unfortunate. The Junin, posing as the Sandame Raikage, was nonetheless taken seriously by his genin opponent. He's good, he can use sand in this way. However, I don't really intend to fight him here. He gave a few hand seals. Raiden, Jibashi. A larger cluster of lightning bolts erupted around Darui, and as he extended his arms, the electricity encircled both Gaara and him. As the Shukaku Jinchuriki realized the strength of Darui's jutsu, he merely muttered, "Suna Kyutai." With a gesture akin to a hug, Darui made the electricity wrap itself around Gaara, who was now securely inside his sand-hardened sphere. In an attempt to find out what Darui was up to, Gaara swiftly created the Daisen no Mi, the third eye, only to growl. Darui's original plan was to avoid Gaara altogether. His scheme worked. Although he wasn't the slowest shinobi, Gaara was undoubtedly not the fastest. It was long since Darui had left, heading for his teammates. Still, he was unconcerned. Temari and Dosu could care for themselves. He let out a sigh a few moments later when he saw a huge gust of wind chakra suddenly tearing through the forest, uprooting trees as it passed by. Temari never hesitates to speak up. Holy shit, a few miles ahead, entire trees were flying through the air, Sashino agreed with Kiba. The genin teams from Naruto, Kurenai, and Kumo took the second test today. The bug user speculated, it seems the chaser is allowed to use ninjutsu to stop our movements. Since Hinata's Byakugan was incapable of seeing that far away, she was unaware of what was happening. Kurenai, standing behind her group, scowled at the demonstration of such potent ninjutsu. Was the pursuer taking things too far? The character of Darui didn't seem like the type. As he extricated himself from the earth, Darui murmured to himself, what a high-leveled food and ninjutsu. Given that Temari's weakness was food and ninjutsu, the only way to escape his attack was underground. They are intuitive enough to recognize each other's chakra presences. We meet again. Cursing his misfortune, Darui leapt around to see the genin from earlier once more. Not that he had dropped his henge, but the electricity that had been dancing around his body had vanished. He fixed this right away. Gaara gave the large man in front of him a smug smile. Darui became a little serious as sand clones emerged from the earth all around him, asking, "Lightning's weakness is food and, huh? My food and ninjutsu isn't as well controlled as my sister's, though." Abruptly, Darui fell to the ground like water. Darui had made the decision to flee once more, and Gaara muttered to himself, "He won't let me delay his advance, he won't fight me. His only goal is to slow us down, then." The somewhat slower Gaara was falling behind as the disguised Raikage began closing the gap on the final two Konoha genin. They have 5 hours to get out of the forest, but they're almost there. This team is pretty good, man. Not even an hour has passed yet. I must move more fluidly than this. Ryusa Bakuryu. He could feel a massive wall of sand threatening to engulf him. Gaara stood behind him, his arms crossed. "If I have sand, I can do anything, even from a distance. You're not getting closer to my team." Darui was taken aback. This young person ahead of him activated a jutsu nearly 500 meters in advance. That requires a great deal of chakra control. This child is not a genin, but still. Putting on a couple hand seals. Ranten no Yoroi. The massive man in front of Gaara encircled himself in black lightning, and his eyes grew wide. He then launched himself through his desert avalanche with ease. Gaara spread his arms and said, "Of course. Raiden can penetrate Doden, especially lightning like that." Now he was growing impatient. Dosu's keen sense of hearing came in handy occasionally. He's getting closer. His speed has increased exponentially and there's a weird buzzing sound around his body. My guess is lightning. Natured chakra. He's a good opponent for you, Tamari. Tamari stopped on a branch of a tree inside. A lightning specialist, huh? Let's see him face a Fuden specialist, then, Fuden. Megamikaze. Dosu smiled from under his bandages, seeing Tamari encircled by deadly wind. Natured chakra, all under her command. She could improve both her offensive and defensive capabilities by using her fan. We don't want Gaara to go all out here. It seems his lightning affinity is giving Gaara a hard time. With a nod, Dosu said, "I'll wait for Gaara and then we'll go ahead. We'll wait for you." Their chaser was drawing near, with Gaara trailing closely behind. "I'll assume you'll be using that?" Tamari nodded as Darui, still disguised, landed on the ground in front of her. Not surprisingly, Darui saw Gaara appear behind Tamari, joining the last remaining genin at the back. Gaara only said, "I see," upon witnessing Tamari's current condition. He gave Dosu a nod, and the two continued on their way. The indolent voice said, "Hey, you just switch easily like that?" With no hint of concern, but Darui wasn't fond of Tamari's appearance. The lone ponytail in her long blonde hair was undone and whipping wildly behind her. Like the Raiden chakra surrounding him, the wind chakra surrounding her was incredibly powerful. Lazily, Darui said, "I hate to tell you, but my Raiden is a bit special. You can't assume Fuden will easily beat this one." Disregarding him, Tamari tightly grasped her fan. After pouring chakra into one of the fan's Fuin seals, she let out, "Fuden, Fujikomu." The Kumo Junin looked around, realizing he was pretty much stuck. Okay, not what I expected. Tamari had created a tornado out of ferocious wind chakra around the two of them. Even though Darui is weak against Fuden, this shouldn't really be an issue for her. No, what was bothersome about this was that the tornado also appeared to have some sort of fire chakra infusion. He was a little uneasy because of the sounds of the searing fire and the razor. Sharp wind all around him. Fuinjutsu. He could still see Tamari smiling in front of him. She released her smug grip on her fan and said, "I thought there was something off about that lightning around you." The wind and fire from the tornado encircling them whipped violently toward Darui with a single, effortless movement of her fan. Darui concentrated on his Ranten no Yoroi and enforced it to see what this combination would do against him. So she can control this tornado from the inside. Time to test it, then. His defense only neutralized Tamari's attack, so he gritted his teeth and exclaimed, "KKKGGGHHH." Tamari had concluded as much, and Darui had as well, as it vanished. Tamari's combination of fire and wind was not nearly as potent as his black lightning. Tamari whispered, "That's unexpected." Darui whimpered, "Those are my words." His gaze swept over the raging tornado surrounding him, saying, "Guess I won't be walking out of this one." His blonde opponent, attacking herself again, whipped her fan horizontally and said, "And that is the difference between you and I." As the fire and wind completely engulfed her and removed her from the tornado, his mouth dropped open in shock. He could already feel Tamari edging further and further away from him. "You're kidding me?" the Junin said with a sigh and a hand seal. I can't believe I have to use this against Genin. Rantan, Funka. Tearing apart Temari's formidable entrapment technique, Darui unleashed a massive amount of storm elemental chakra that would explode on contact. He stopped moving as soon as he got out to look behind him and noticed that the tornado appeared to be fading. Wait a minute, that tornado thing would only have been active for a few more moments? He let out a sigh. Yeah, wasted so much chakra, but who could have predicted how long he would have been imprisoned there? Dosu asked as soon as Temari joined the two of them. What do we do? He's a lot stronger than I anticipated. Able to even escape your tornado entrapment jutsu. He's already out? Temari questioned in shock. I guess I underestimated him. Her brother told her, yes, he used a very powerful black lightning technique. After all, his third eye had been watching the fight. We can't beat him. It would reveal too much of our power. He went on. All we can do is stall. Do you want to try next, Dosu? The bandaged nin replied, to be honest. No, he seems specialized in ranged attacks. I could stall as it seems he's limited to non-lethal combat. But the battle wouldn't be in my favor, I would be revealing too many of my jutsu. Joining forces could unintentionally defeat him, Temari continued. Me and Gaara could stall him more, but I would have to go all out eventually and Gaara. Well, Gaara might accidentally beat him on his own. Gaara gave a tentative shrug. He's strong, I might even have to go Jinchuriki mode against him. I don't want to use that. Then we run, Dosu said, glancing at Gaara with one eye. Use Sunabunshin and use traps, anything to slow him down. We'll run as fast as we can. Yes. We can't afford to reveal how strong we really are. Gaara concurred. Temari spun in midair and saw Darui off in the distance. I'll start off with Kachiyose, Kirakiramai. Slice and dice in. Temari's summon whispered as it made its way to Darui, carrying wind chakra and a variety of slicing tools. Even though his team had spent the most of the test running, Naruto was happy to hear that they had passed. It was his turn today, and he was going to be pursuing a Kumo team. Actually, she's Genin team. Don't you think you're taking things a bit too far, Naruto? A's voice startled Naruto out of his reverie as he was idly strolling through the first section of the forest. He could still feel the Kumo Genin team in the distance. He saw the huge man standing on what appeared to be an extremely flimsy tree branch when he looked up. Aren't you afraid the branch will snap, eh? Are you saying I'm heavy? The shout-out caused the branch to break almost immediately, but the rakeage landed casually in front of Naruto and his 4 shadow clones. The genuine Naruto was an exact replica of Namikaze Minato, Naruto's father. Ginkaku and Kinkaku were 2 clones, and Kyuubi chakra was very active in their vicinity. Jiraiya and Orochimaru were the last 2, their hands resting on each other's shoulders in a friendship-like manner. I found it a little unsettling. I had to admit that Naruto's imitations were spot on. They all exuded strong chakras. With his arms folded in a detached expression towards the others, the 4th Hokage was relaxing against a tree. A bit irritated, she said, your father wasn't that cool, Naruto. Ginkaku. Kinkaku. The rakeage yelled, they don't yell each other's names that often, Naruto. Following a few more dozen screams of each other's names. Who do you think you're touching, Jiraiya, Kekekeke? Wahahaha. Shut up, you snake freak, we're best friends, remember? Why would I be, with a loudmouth pervert like you, Kekekeke? Wahahaha. Who here has the pervert voice now again? With a sardonic glance at the quarreling shadow clones, Raikage hanged Jiraiya and Orochimaru. He coughed and returned to his work, saying, those 2 might actually be in character. He's got the laughs right, if I remember correctly. Don't get carried away, Naruto, don't kill them. The Yondaime Hokage disappeared in a yellow flash, followed by Ginkaku and Kinkaku with a red flash. Orochimaru sank beneath the ground, and Jiraiya called forth a toad, forcing it to swallow him before vanishing himself. Interesting. It said, now that he was by himself. That kid's really good, and his cage Bunshin seemed to have minds of their own. I feel sorry for those Genin. A few seconds later, he could already hear someone scream. Jiraiya was left stranded in the land of iron, as Naruto had finally returned, relieving her of her burden. There were only a few days remaining before the Chunin exam's final test, which was always the same. A competition. He found out that the Chunin exams this time would be witnessed by the Tsuchikage and Mizukage. He pondered the nature of those 2 people. Jiraiya wasn't in the best of moods after waiting for Naruto to return for 3 whole days. Anyhow, why did he never find out about that Hiraishin? Without a doubt, he would not have been sitting in this chilly nation. It was best that they left as soon as possible. With Mifune directly in front of them and Samurai to their left and right, the two sat around the large table. Jiraiya. Sama has informed me of why you've come before me, Naruto-san. Mifune began. He was interrupted, but I'd like you to. As Naruto abruptly disappeared in a flash of yellow. Mifune fixed Jiraiya with his gaze, causing her to laugh nervously. I think he just got summoned. Somewhere else. When Naruto materialized exactly where Haku had thrown his signature kunai, he and Zabuza were facing each other amid a throng of Kiri Enbu Hunter.nin. Naruto muttered, eyeing the Kiri Hite.8, well, shit. It seems, to avoid war, I'll have to kill all of you. As Naruto unleashed a killer intent that he had been keeping hidden for a good few months, Haku and Zabuza watched in horror. This boy believes that in order to protect everyone and everything, he must also be able to destroy everyone and everything. Haku was in a state he had never believed was possible after witnessing her mentor, Zabuza, kill numerous groups in front of him in a manner akin to what Naruto had just accomplished. However, it was distinct. Glancing sideways, he noticed Zabuza was as taken aback as he was. But the better word to use was shocked. Both of them were rapidly and softly panting. This was brought on by fear rather than weariness. Naruto asked, peering over his shoulder at the two, are you guys alright? After witnessing the brief massacre, Zabuza was barely able to utter his own words, why? Yeah, kid. He attempted to joke, you didn't hold back, huh? I did. Was Naruto's startling response. If I hadn't, I probably would have taken the two of you down by accident as well. When they used kunai to summon Naruto, they were engaged in combat with the Hunter.nin on a lake near Water Country. The lake had turned a bright red color, and the only remnants of the Hunter.nin were some severed hands floating in the water. When Haku finally spotted one, it was just below the surface. What a terrifying thought, that a boy so innocent could unleash such devastating force. Not entirely satisfied with the circumstances, Naruto muttered, I couldn't afford to let any of them escape. Hunter.nin from Kiri. I wore my Hite.8, so if even one of them escaped, it would have meant trouble for Konoha. The only thing Zabuza could think of to say was, no one got away. The demon of the mist wasn't exactly comfortable standing on a lake of blood, but he couldn't claim to be entirely at ease either. Haku's voice asked, Naruto.kun, are you alright? A few seconds later. Naruto's harsh voice said, I'm fine. I won't let any harm come to my allies. He paused, looking around him and at them, saying, don't hesitate to summon me again if you were ever in trouble. He smiled at them as if he hadn't just killed 2 squadrons of Kiri. Hunter.nin. I was in the middle of a meeting, actually. So I have to go again. There might come a time where I'll need your help. But that'll be when I'm Hokage. Be careful, you two. He gave a single bow before disappearing in a flash of yellow light. Unaware of the breath he was holding, Zabuza let it out. Haku took similar actions. That was a surprise. Though we were spared, why does this hurt so much? The young man thought these things. Zabuza went to retrieve the kunai Haku had thrown, thinking to himself, I'd better think twice before using that kunai again. That kid's as crazy as they come, Haku. Not insane. It seems more like he's overdetermined, if that's even a thing. Haku muttered, feeling at last mobile. His harsh voice nearly seemed to order his guards to draw their swords when he said, that's impossible. No one can access the vault, no one could possess that sword, and yet. Mifune glared at Naruto before getting up from his chair and approaching the blonde with composure. He peered more closely at the sword in Naruto's right hand and asked, it vanishes if you no longer touch it, he asked, it only responds to your touch? After observing the blonde nod, show me. Naruto opened his right hand, and the Ego Kaiki vanished instantly. Mifune nodded, concluding that there was sufficient evidence. He said, that was no henge. Still glaring at Naruto, Mifune gestured to his guards, who responded by putting blades to Naruto's neck, saying, that is the real Ego Kaiki. Unfazed, Naruto returned Mifune's glare with his own. To have this weapon in your possession, one would think you've broken into our vault. But for you to able wield it, you have to have the same blood as Namikaze Minato, the one who helped create the Ego Kaiki. Tell me who you really are, child. Naruto began, I didn't break into your vault, Mifune. Sama. But your assumptions are correct, I am Namikaze Minato's son. The elderly samurai whispered, I never knew he had a son. The blades of the guards remained at his throat. Madden ninjutsu, huh? It's becoming a rather scary world with possibilities like this. Jiraiya abruptly spoke and unclasped his hands in front of his face, saying, "So, you figured it out? You think it's possible?" I didn't think it was possible to copy the ability of a sword, but Minato Sama has shown me differently when he copied one of the swords of the 7 swordsmen of the mist with his ego Kaiki. Mifune switched from Jiraiya to Naruto. A lot of things considered impossible are made possible by Fuinjutsu. Am I right if I say you are talented in Fuinjutsu? Although Naruto wanted to slant his head, the blades were too near together. He chose to shrug it off instead. I'm catching up to Jiraiya Sama. Mifune gestured for Naruto to be released from the blades, saying, "That means yes, child." The guards obeyed with ease. "Come with me, your claims from before seem far-fetched no longer." Nodding, Naruto and Jiraiya trailed behind Mifune and his guards. Minato Namikaze Sama has told me of the possibility of your arrival long ago, Naruto-san. It was why, even if you had broken into our vault, I wouldn't have cared anyway. For you see, our vault is actually your father's. I hold the key to it, but so do you. Or rather, so does your blood. Mifune grinned and said, "But now you've made an old man very excited. Your request is to watch what happens when 2 of the same sword clash with one another." As they got closer to a big gate, Jiraiya could feel Mifune and Naruto's excitement. Namikaze Minato once asked himself and me the same thing. The Chunin exams, yeah? Zetsu gave Deidara a single nod, and Sasori pivoted his puppet body. It is pointless at the moment, then. There will be at least 2 Kage in Kumogakure. We will wait. One of the Jashin followers among them cried out, "Why do we have to wait? It just means more sacrifices for Jashin. Sama, what good are 2 Kage against us, huh? Huh?" The masked Kakuzu glared at his partner, saying, "Shut up, Hidan. The current Raikage isn't a man to be taken lightly." Kakuzu, who was always the oldest, called everyone kids and said, "This kid is right, we have to wait." It came as no surprise, then, that he called Sasori, kid. Deidara pressed some clay to his right hand and huffed. "Doesn't hurt to do some recon, huh?" Zetsu said, "Not necessary, Deidara. Senpai. I'm already inside." After all, the man resembling a plant might explode from his clay, the man thought. So, who's fighting who? While the rest of his team was gathered in the living room, Naruto was in the kitchen preparing dinner. It was late afternoon when he had returned from the Land of Iron, and he and old man Mifune had a great deal to talk about their discoveries. Either way, that old samurai was his new ally. Naruto was curious about Mifune's strength. Is there any way the man could teach him kenjutsu? While fiddling with a metal puppet, Konkaru remarked, "It's not the same as in Konoha." Konkaru wasn't one of the competitors, after all, and he said, "They're going to be fighting Junin. Leveled shinobi. Every genin gets the chance to impress the judges." "Yeah, I know. I guess it considers me Junin. Leveled because I'm going to be one of them." Naruto laughed. "But don't you already know who your opponents are?" Gaara was the next to respond. By the frown on his face, it appeared that he was losing the chess match against Dosu. No. Tamari, who was sitting by the window watching the civilians go by, said, "They'll just flash out names. I kinda feel sorry for the guy facing you, though." Tayuya joined Naruto in the kitchen, saying, "These Chunin exams sound really boring to me." She had been lying down on the couch before, occasionally glancing at Gaara and Dosu's chess game. In moments, she would use both of them to wipe the floor. "Where have you been these last few days, anyway? It was fucking boring doing those lame missions with the puppeteer." Naruto smiled at the girl with red hair. "I was busy. But my Fuin Bunshin are always around you. When my Fuin Bunshin dispel, I get their experience and their memories, so all you have to do is ask them where they are." With her finger inserted into one of the pans Naruto was using to cook something, Tayuya asked, "Are you an idiot? I can't see your Fuin Bunshin. Remember?" Naruto saw Tayuya's disapproving look, which was rather sour. "Like I said, they're always around you. All you have to do is whisper." "What?" Konkaru smiled to see that Tamari had suddenly appeared in the kitchen, standing next to Tayuya. The 2 girls had let out a loud, "What? Pervert." To his surprise, Dosu seemed amused as well. "Hey, Captain screws up sometimes too, huh?" Konkaru asked. Gaara was preoccupied with the chess match. Tamari could jump farther and even float for a brief period of time with wind chakra wrapped around the soles of her feet. Her opponent charged at her the moment she touched down. What? Not even a battle announcement or start signal. But she knew why they'd done this. They were attempting to give the impression that this test was authentic. There were no such things as signals, announcements, or warnings in a real battle. With a sly smile, Tamari swung her fan diagonally, forming a passable tornado around herself to put some distance between her and her opponent. It turned out that the Junin who had pursued her team in the second test was her opponent. She thought his name was Darui. The dark-skinned man did some complicated hand seals and concluded by putting both of his hands in front of his face, saying, "You're quick on your feet. Rantan, Laser Circus." If we exclude Naruto from her group, Tamari was the fastest. With ease, she skidded back and forth to avoid the numerous beams of lightning that were aimed at her. She realized that Darui had the ability to control them, and she realized that this jutsu contained more than just regular lightning. No, this jutsu possessed that Rantan element, which could negate her wind. Fire combo jutsu as well. She needed to exercise extreme caution. She then slammed her fan squarely into Darui's position after racing to catch up to him. Her speed, though, was not as quick as a Shunshin's, and Darui easily avoided the attack while also canceling his own laser circus. Darui muttered, "You're really quick for a genin." He said, "My apologies, but I want to see just how quick." Just then, a flash of lightning encircled him, and he sprinted in her direction. Darui saw at once that Tamari had the advantage over him because wind-natured chakra surrounded her body. That's why Darui's taijutsu wasn't lightning taijutsu, but rather regular taijutsu. In her wind goddess mode, Tamari was actually pushing the Junin back. As he just about avoided being struck by a kick and a blow from the fan, Darui muttered, "I know enough." Satisfied that he was still faster than the genin, he leapt backwards. It's absurd. Is this girl like all the genin from Konoha, or is she too strong to be one? Even so, her chakra reserves must be being taxed by that jutsu. Darui gave his opponent a bleak glance before making some hand gestures. Sweden, Gekuru no Jutsu. As with Darui's previous jutsu, he had total control over this one as well. Darui unleashed a torrent of water that shot from his mouth and raced toward Tamari. Darui combined lightning with the water technique with a swift one-handed seal to see what Tamari would do next. Even if she employed a Shunshin in this instance, Darui was fast enough to damage her from behind him using this move. But Shunshin was not used by her. At that precise moment, Darui realized he was still facing a genin, and perhaps she wasn't quite ready to execute the Shunshin. She fully opened her fan and made a swing. Fuuten, Kusoku no Jutsu. Watching wind-natured chakra fly from her fan and encircle his jutsu, virtually trapping it in mid-air in an air bubble, akin to the water prison jutsu, Darui had to suppress an irritated growl. "Unlike you, I don't have my hands occupied holding a jutsu." Tamari lunged for Darui as he swiftly undid his jutsu. Both his and her jutsu became fully hers the instant he released the grip he was holding on to them. As he dodged Tamari's attack, Darui saw how his own jutsu and Tamari's wind restraint technique would meet him exactly where his dodge had taken him. Rantan no Yoroi. Darui grimaced, not expecting to use this defensive move against a lone genin. He passed through Tamari's counter with ease wearing this armor. "I suggest you pick up the pace now, genin, I'm done holding back." Tamari gave him a sly grin. She was holding her fan in her left hand and pouring chakra into the Fuin seal on her right when she said, "What a coincidence. Kachiyose." The Kumo Junin felt that things were about to get a little more difficult. Now Tamari had two large fans in her hands, both wide open. "I'm also done with the warm-up. Food and Hajutsu, Yakushin," Darui exclaimed as she watched Tamari begin to dance in circles, her admirers still wide open. Around them, tornadoes composed of wind and fire merged, clashed, and danced in a manner reminiscent of Tamari's. And then they began to attack him without mercy, some merging into larger tornadoes, others reducing in size as they approached the evading Junin. However, Darui's status as an elite Junin wasn't in vain. He was still able to avoid jutsu strikes and, in the event that he was struck, his armor would largely shield him from harm. But the blonde genin was more difficult to get close to. It appeared that she was being shielded by the stronger tornadoes, the ones that were mixed with fire and wind. After all, those tornadoes could match his armor piece for piece. Then again, how long can she continue like this? As he dodged tiny tornadoes and repeated a few hand seals from earlier, Darui wondered. Rantan, Laser Circus. Tamari watched in relief as her tornadoes neutralized every one of his laser beams. The unfortunate thing was that they made her defense entirely invisible. Her new defense was a quick fusion of the local tornadoes that were already present. As Tamari watched him perform the same hand seals, she quickly surmised, his jutsu can cancel out mine and vice versa. She also knew that Darui realized this earlier. He's too fast for my jutsu, Tamari thought to herself as she turned her attention to her own protection. She could perform a few more hand seals since she had no trouble controlling her Yakushin jutsu. I guess a Junin is still too much for me to handle. Fuuten, Renkuden. She used jutsu with the intention of pushing Darui away. The issue was that in order to perform the technique, she had to fold one of her fans and strap it to her back. Tamari muttered, "You're strong," and reached for her second fan. But Darui extended a hand. Darui looked at the three cage sitting there watching the matches and said, "That's okay. There's actually a time limit for the matches. You're not allowed to go back down to your team to prevent you from telling them this." The blonde followed Darui's direction and saw a small lounge just underneath the balcony where the cage were seated. "In a week or so, you'll be hearing how you performed here. You can rest there and watch the remaining genin fight." Tamari replied, "I see," as she strapped the other fan to her back and sent the other back to her scroll. "Thank you for the match." "Yes." Darui trailed behind her. "I'm also supposed to wait there." Tushi, one of his elite Junin, the Raikage, said aloud, "She was originally from Sanagakure, right?" In the arena, Maeda Guy was unfolding a scroll that revealed his opponent, the subsequent genin contestant, and remarked, "That brat's got some pretty strong subordinates already." The recently appointed Mizukage sat next to the Raikage, with her long auburn hair partially hiding her cleavage. Though little was known about the events in Kiri, it appeared that things had subsided enough for one of the cages to leave the village. Shojiro, one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, and Ao, an elite Kiri Junin, were on either side of her. Jiraiya was leaning against the wall near the 2 cage, grinning in a way that had never been seen before. He was, of course, taking notes in a notepad and looking in different directions every now and then. Something strange happened as the 2 cage watched Guy finally realize the meaning of the scroll in his hands. One figure appeared in front of the cage after the air swirled. He simply materialized in front of them all and uttered 2 words. "Shinra Tensai." Speaking calmly to the other Akatsuki members, Toby said, "I have already dispatched Nagato in several places. I will get you into Kumo as well. Our main goal at the moment is to put a scar on the planet. All will know where Kumo once lay," Toby said to Deidara. With a maniacal smile on his face, Deidara immediately took to the skies and said, "You will attack from the sky. On my signal, you have permission to level it to the ground. We need not give damage to our own. Kakuzu, do not split yourself up, it makes you too vulnerable in a village." The explosion you just heard was Nagato's Diva Path. The Raikage, Mizukage and Jiraiya should be horribly wounded. Your task is to finish them off. Before focusing once more, Sasori and Hidan observed Toby employing his peculiar mode of transportation on Kakuzu. "Hidan, kill everyone." Hidan repressed a fit of irrational laughter, and Toby teleported him away. "Sasori, your job is to try and capture only one Jinchuriki. The Ichibi no Shukaku, Sabaku no Gara. Use whatever means necessary." He turned to a tall tree in the distance as he teleported the last person in the room away. Now for the remaining instructions from Nagato and Konan. Holy, the needle that was lodged in his mouth fell to the floor. Genma managed to say, "Is it bad I feel somewhat happy, Hokage? Sama isn't here." The whole balcony where the cage were sitting had vanished. All that was visible now was a lone orange-haired shinobi wearing an Akatsuki cloak floating above the flying debris. Kakashi flashed his Sharingan eye and said, "No time for jokes, Genma." He turned to face his fellow Junin and said, "That explosion was all chakra. That guy is no ordinary shinobi. Everyone with a genin squad should go to their position. The others should help out wherever needed. Although we have no alliance with Kumo or Kiri, Konoha will show them we are reliable shinobi." Kakuzu could only see the target directly in front of him. He should be here because Toby teleported him here. Have the others passed away yet? The Raikage struggled to stand up, his body gushing blood in multiple places. "Raikage, right? You look weaker than your predecessors." Before Kakuzu could respond, the injured cage in front of him vanished and reappeared behind him, slamming him hard against the ground. But to A's surprise, Kakuzu gave him a forceful kick to the ribs. The Akatsuki member mocked the lightning leader, saying, "What a pussy punch. You're Raiden specialized, right? Catch, oh powerful cage, Fuuten, Atsugai." Once more, a disappeared and reappeared above Kakuzu. They dismissed his wind blast with indifference. Guillotine drop. Shit. Not even my armory jutsu can match its power for. Still, it wasn't a particularly harsh blow. Satisfied that his metallic skin had once again saved him, Kakuzu kicked the enormous man atop him away with great speed. Next, he examined the sword that had become embedded in the ground beside him. "You should thank Samahada, old man, Akatsuki." Naruto blasted off after Jiraiya at the sound of the explosion, teleporting him to Temari, the only member of his squad skilled in medic jutsu. You managed to find him during that explosion? Naruto glanced up at the lone Junin in the area as Temari was tending to Jiraiya. Darui, right? Raikage. Sama is currently fighting two members of the Akatsuki. She is on his way to him. You'd better help out, too. They're strong. Hoshigaki Kisame and Kakuzu. Darui nodded to the blonde, initiating Shunshin right away. Naruto pivoted back to face Jiraiya and Temari. You alright, old man? Jiraiya snorted, shut up, little brat. Even after healing him, Temari said, I've had bigger attacks land on me. I see Kakashi has gathered all the Junin with their squads and brought them to safety. It's unnecessary for Konoha to get involved. Naruto shot back, you're wrong. With a cold demeanor. His icy blue eyes briefly locked on Jiraiya before saying, I believe he's their target. Someone's heading over to where Gaara and the others are. He pointed up at the sky and said, let's help Kumogakure, Jiraiya. Sama. That guy is also very annoying. Jiraiya looked up to see explosives falling from the sky and an odd bird. Someone who can fly. Huh. Toads eat flies, you know. Mizukage. Sama. They were crawling toward their fallen leader, Ao and Chojuro. Are you alright, Mizukage, Sama? After getting up from the ground, Terumi Mei turned to face her subordinates. I am. You two, however, seem to be in bad shape. I suggest you three go back to Kirigakure. The three turned to face the unexpected voice. Mei narrowed her eyes at the blonde standing in front of her, saying, I didn't sense this boy. Naruto calmly spoke as he attempted to sense if anyone was approaching their position. Kumogakure is under attack and shinobi from Konohagakure are assisting in the defense. There's no need for Kirigakure to get involved. My advice for you is to leave. When Ao finally managed to get to his feet, his raspy voice asked, Who are you? He was really worn down from that attack. Don't think you can order Mizukage. Sama around, you. Mei interrupted him. It's alright, Ao. Although I wouldn't mind you introducing yourself. Konoha.nin. It's Uzumaki Naruto. You were attacked by Akatsuki, you aren't what they're after. Uzumaki. Mei gave the blonde boy a slight narrowing of the eyes. I am Mizukage, boy. You think I won't retaliate after being attacked too ruthlessly? Any other shinobi would have died from an attack like that. He gestured west and said, suit yourself. The Raikage is fighting off two Akatsuki members that way, perhaps he could use some assistance? Mei wanted to respond, but she was prevented because Naruto simply disappeared. There was no smoke or chakra. What is jutsu? She turned to face Ao. Use your Byakugan. Where did he go? Already, the Kiri Junin was swaying his head. I was already using my Byakugan, Mizukage. Sama. He simply vanished. Mei clenched her hands. That means. Madden ninjutsu? A young kid like that? That young, talented shinobi from Konoha? She shook herself off the inquisitive topic and returned her attention to Ao and Chojuro. Is it true? Is the Raikage fighting someone? Ao nodded right away. The boy wasn't lying. The Raikage also seems to be losing. Akumo Junin is on his way as well, but they are strong. One of them is Hoshigaki Kisame. Mei flashed a savage smile. Time to cut off a loose end, then. All of the genin waiting for their match appeared utterly shocked to see explosions above when the ceiling burst. Kumo appeared to be being targeted. But none of them overlooked the person who had just landed in front of them. The odd creature said, it seems Deidara is good for something. Gaara, Kage Bunshin from Naruto, and the other participating genin looked at the strange, large person who was crouching in front of them, asking, who are you? Akatsuki, right? Wait a little longer. The true me will arrive shortly, murmured the Kage Bunshin beside Gaara. I am Akasuna no Sasori. Come with me willingly and no harm will come to you or the others. Resist and everyone in this room will die except for you, Sabaku no Gaara. Sasori was impressed, inside his puppet, when a wall of sand materialized out of nowhere behind Gaara, dividing him, Dosu, Naruto's shadow clone, and Gaara from everyone else. Gaara swiftly sealed the hole in the ceiling, saying, it seems you misunderstand. You are the one who will die here. This made the space they were in much darker. Dosu laughed. Don't think too lowly of us now, puppeteer. I can hear the real you inside of that puppet. The puppet shifted slightly and swished its tail behind it, saying, who? Interesting. You don't seem too worried. Surely, you know who I am? Gaara sighed and cast a perceptive glance at Dosu. A Kubitsu user doesn't stand a chance against a Jinchuriki. Akasuna no Sasori, you're a legendary shinobi from Suna, but, so am I. After comprehending Gaara's message, Dosu began removing his bandages. A shinobi unsure of his surroundings will be a dead shinobi. Naruto remained silent behind the two. He would see to it that his friends suffered no harm. Kakashi. As Naruto materialized next to him, the Sharingan wielding Junin maintained his focus on everything surrounding him. Asuma, Kurenai, and Guy were standing next to Kakashi. The hole in the ground where the Genin participants would jump out of had been sealed off. I can use Raiden to go underneath. Is this Gaara's doing? The blonde gave a nod. Yes. They're facing a member of the Akatsuki. He didn't want anyone interfering. I'll help out by usage of Hiraishin. There's no need to open the ground only for Gaara to face more danger. The Genin down there are safe, but you should be able to get to them. Naruto was pointing ahead. Gaara separated them from himself. Right there is where you can use Raiden and get the Genin to safety. The blonde wondered in the back of his mind if he could use this confusion that Akatsuki created to complete the task that Kakashi and the other Junin had been given by the Hokage. The recovery of Hisashi Hyuga. But first, he had to ensure the safety of all his allies. Go. I'll help Gaara, you help the Genin. With a nod, Kakashi launched his Reikiri. He commanded the other Konoha Junin to follow me. Naruto's Kage Bunshin had not yet issued a warning, so they were managing Sasori in some way. He felt the presence of a familiar figure drawing near as he surveyed the battlefield. The blonde gave a nod, thinking that another formidable individual might be useful. Yo, Kurabi. Pain's diva path was in front of the real Naruto, but the blonde didn't seem to want the path to notice her. A Chunin like yourself should know better than to pick a losing battle. Get out of the way or I'll make you disappear. However, Naruto just smiled, his eyes like a toad's, at his foe, Kage Bunshin. While Diva Path was observing the mayhem surrounding Kumo, Naruto's lone Kage Bunshin charged towards him without even flinching. A second orange-haired Akatsuki member leapt in front of Diva Path, severing the shadow clone in half with a massive axe to destroy it. The real Naruto, facing two Akatsuki members, deadpanned, your arm can change into an axe. The newcomer's body was still changing and he was bald. Naruto took offense at something protruding from the man's shoulder and aimed directly at him. And then there were rockets, lots and lots of rockets. What the? All of them were easily avoided by Naruto, but that didn't stop the rockets from flying all over the place, damaging random shinobi as well as buildings. The young Uzumaki said, fine. All 50 of the kunai he threw at the two in front of him missed. He called forth his sword, the Eigo Kaiki, by pouring chakra into his palm. Akatsuki, you're going down. Then he began to flash around the two, using his Eigo Kaiki to take out the gunner of the two. Enthusiastically, Diva Path observed a Chunin move too quickly for his vision. Though perhaps intrigued, it didn't sit well with him. Shinra Tensai. All the kunai he'd scattered around them were blasted away with a massive blow. And Naruto was thrown away as well. He wanted to cough up dust after slamming through a wall, but he had to roll sideways because the man with the orange hair had followed him. He used Hiraishin to teleport to one of his kunai after witnessing an odd black rod pierce the ground where he had just landed. Glancing around, he saw that he had come to rest near the man he had slain. When he was struck by the Shinra Tensai, his Eigo Kaiki had not yet been summoned. A powerful blast that blows everything away around him, huh? Hey, yo. The Hachibi Jinchuriki called out to Naruto, who appeared relieved. Kurabi. Nice. I was just fighting off someone really strong. Where he at, this stupid brat? Looking up at the Diva Path floating above them, Kurabi and Naruto said, you were pretty good for a Chunin. He looked at Kurabi and said, too good to not get rid of. Diva Path's Rinnegan narrowed his eyes and said, and you're Hachibi. Suddenly, 4 more orange-haired Akatsuki members landed on the roof across from them. You're in the way of my plan. Naruto appeared somewhat perplexed. The blonde made sure he was prepared to use Hiraishin to get everyone he cared about to safety, asking, are you guys related? He could stall and learn more about his opponents in the interim. Naruto, this is no time for jokes, these be serious folks. Sasori was growing impatient. There was little time for mobility when fighting underground. Being a puppeteer, he required room. Here he could not call upon 100 puppets without limiting their every move. Both of his opponent's combined skills had easily defeated Hiriko. Up until now, the blonde in the back had just been watching. He gritted out, you seem rather prepared. I guess you leave me no choice but to use lethal jutsu. Gaara's eyes grew wide when Sasori called forth a puppet that he knew right away. Say hello, Sabaku no Gaara, to your grandfather. Sandame, Cage. What, how? Sasori used the iron sand to make the third form a medium-sized Suna symbol in midair, saying, I can make humans into puppets. I call it Hitokugutsu. Retaining all of his abilities, the third Cage has now become my weapon. Subsequently, he destroyed the emblem and directed it towards his adversaries. Best to dodge, children, as the poison inside is very deadly. But iron sand missed its mark. It had not so much evaporated as vanished. It shocked Sasori. What? The blonde in the back eventually turned and walked towards Gaara and Dosu, saying, that sounded a bit too dangerous. I sealed away that dangerous stuff. Sasori said, Fuinjutsu, space-time barrier. Because there was no other option. He asked, who are you? Thinking that the iron sand would still be nearby, but it wasn't. Even though he still had access to iron sand, he had used a significant quantity of it previously. Where did you send it off to? Sasori growled. It was foolish to fight a Fuinjutsu practitioner, especially one who could perform a space-time barrier so quickly. Even with his own knowledge of Fuinjutsu, he was unable to accomplish this. The puppeteer didn't think well of a Fuinjutsu user, so the odds were stacked against him. Hell, nobody was suited to face an advanced practitioner of Fuinjutsu. He put his hand to his stomach and said, I am Uzumaki Naruto. Just like Gaara. I am a Jinchuriki. You are Akatsuki and you are after the Biju inside us. You won't get them. I will destroy Akatsuki. Uzumaki. Really? Never thought I'd have to deal with one of them again. This person, who is so proficient in Fuinjutsu at such a young age, seems to be a prodigy. Fret not, Sasori. The man with the puppet head cocked to the side to see that Itachi had materialized out of thin air. Sasori began to believe Itachi was familiar with Madan Ninjutsu. We seem to be facing off against quite the youngsters, Itachi. With his hands still in his pockets, Itachi calmly answered, one of them is just a Kage Bunshin. And I have defeated these two before. The Konoha.nin prudently avoided looking at his Mangekyo Sharingan as he activated it, saying, Naruto.kun. We're here for Gaara.kun now. Surely, you don't want to repeat? Deidara knew something was wrong when he heard someone call out Kachiyose and saw a huge cloud of smoke rise above the village. But seconds later, he wasn't expecting to be dodging tongue attacks from a giant toad. Gamabunta appeared to be amusing himself while Deidara was desperately flailing through the air, exclaiming, damn this. My explosions can't even hurt the damn toad. If this goes on I'll go ahead and skip to the finale. To hell with the plan, then, yeah. Deidara let out a fit of giggling as the bird he was riding got stuck and he started to fall. Fuck this, I'll use C3. This was noticed by Toby, who was watching all of this from a distance, and he cursed. Shit. Breathing heavily, the Reikage and Mizukage fought off Kisame and Kakuzu. Mei said, they're stronger than I expected. Perhaps she could have dealt with Kisame on her own, but Kakuzu was no less formidable. The Reikage, his body still a mess of blood, roared, why didn't you bring a medic? Darui was up behind the two, but he was cautious and perceptive enough to realize he was losing the battle. Adjacent to Darui, Ao was the same. All they did was wait for opportunities. Chojuro was defeated quickly because Kisame became furious upon seeing someone wielding a legendary sword similar to his own. If the Mizukage hadn't stepped in, he would have nearly killed the boy. Mei shot back, this is hardly the time to complain. She was furious with Kisame for mistreating Chojuro in such a way. While they were surviving, the boy was dying. Unexpectedly, a man in a mask materialized behind Kisame and Kakuzu. Scatter. Deidara's gone mad. Kisame and Kakuzu both sighed before turning tail abruptly. After exchanging glances, the Reikage and Mizukage swiftly turned to face their subordinates. Before they could all look up, Ao picked up the injured Chojuro and said, let's get back. A blinding flash informed them of some very bad news. Itachi. The sudden appearance of Toby caused both Sasori and Itachi to turn. All they could say as Toby led them away from the underground battle was, I see. Dosu said to Gaara, I wonder what that meant. Naruto raced toward Gaara and Dosu, appearing to be in a state of extreme panic. Summon them. Losing them over something as fickle as this would be stupid, damn that Deidara. Following Nagato's instructions, Konan summoned all of Nagato's paths to the tall tree they had constructed using the Kachiyose no Jutsu. Jiraiya's eyes grew wide as she watched Deidara's bomb explode in the center of Kumogakure from above. Sucked into the explosion in the distance, Reikage had to use all the remaining chakra to protect himself. In a similar manner, The Mizukage surrounded herself and anyone nearby with a lava dome. Hiraishin was used by Naruto to get his followers to a safe location, but he was unsure if he would be able to reach everyone in time. If anything, Tsunade was what he needed. Kumogakure was nearly totally destroyed by the explosion. Toby gave the members presently in front of him a shake of his head. With a hint of frustration, he said, Sabaku no Gara is no longer in Kumogakure. I assume he is now well protected within the walls of Konoha, thanks to Uzumaki Naruto's Hiraishin no Jutsu. Capturing the Jinchuriki seems to be harder than I anticipated. Nagato entered the room where the Akatsuki members were gathered, rolling his mechanical walker and saying, Uzumaki Naruto is but a chunin. He is no threat. I fought him and he barely touched me. As usual, Akatsuki's puppeteer stood while the others were seated. He may be chunin, but his jutsu are far above what a chunin should have in his arsenal. I think we have to focus on the Kyuubi first. After all, he was a puppet, and puppets never sit. Toby sighed, setting down his mask to show everyone his face. Sasori may be right, but the Kyuubi Jinchuriki is cunning. Kisame grinned as she recognized him. I believe it's time you all know what the real goal of this organization is. His hands were clenched. Uzumaki Naruto has become a major hindrance. Kisame blurted, wait a minute. Where's Hidan? Out of the blue, did you forget? Uchiha Obito sighed and placed his mask on the table in front of them, saying, of course I didn't, Kisame. Hidan survives everything. That explosion was nothing to him. Right now, Kumogakure is too dangerous. Killer Bee is in full Biju mode and the Raikage is very angry. To top that off, Uzumaki Naruto managed to bring Tsunade to Kumo and she is currently patching up the populace by usage of her summon, Katsuyu. I'll wait until things simmer down to fetch the mess that is Hidan. Deidara is on his way back and managed to escape from Jiraiya. He glanced at Nagato. I believe you should set him straight, he is a very unreliable member. I'll pair him with Itachi, shrugged Nagato. Itachi appeared less amused than Kisame, who was chuckling for a brief moment. Nagato said coldly, but at least Kumogakure has been leveled to the ground. The world now knows Akatsuki, before turning to face Obito. Now, perhaps it's time you introduce yourself to the others? Yes, I am Uchiha Obito, and you will all follow my lead. 2 months is the time skip. Jutsu Kenge Henge no latent ability, huh? Naruto was poring over the blood scroll that his past self had left for him. There wasn't much to understand because everything came easily to him. He realized what the future Naruto had written down the moment he read it, and he felt foolish for not learning about it sooner. His curiosity about the jutsu he hadn't fully explored was piqued by the second Kumo Chunin exam test. After all, it might develop into a fighting style on its own. He could call this, just as he had Jinchuriki and Toad modes, army configuration. However, to master this jutsu, just when I expected it to, there was a knock at this makeshift apartment. Come in, Anko. Senpai. Anko moved past him and entered the tiny corridor that connected to the living room. The others? They're in the other apartment, we're all alone here. With a wink, the purple-haired Junin entered the living room. These couches aren't big enough for the bothus, though. The blonde Shunin hesitated, appearing to be in a rather solemn state of mind. He didn't really know this Anko all that well yet, so he asked, huh? What? Do you mean? He only knew that she was completely insane. He didn't anticipate her being this way, though. She merely grinned evilly and said, you heard me. A moment later, she decided to lie down on the bigger of the 2 couches. So, what was it you wanted to talk about? In all honesty, Naruto replied, bingo book. I already asked Kakashi Sensei a lot about it. I'm a Chunin, so I'm not permitted to have one in my possession. Sensei told me you know a lot about the shinobi in the bingo book, so. Anko snorted and settled into the couch while Naruto moved to the other couch. What, you want me to give you biographies? That's too boring and too much talking. Hell, that would even be too much talking for Maida Guy, Anko said. I'd still want it, though. The blonde with the mischievous gleam in her eyes caught the special Junin's attention, but he couldn't quite figure out what she was getting at. You're a boring date, kid. She sighed and went on. What's in it for me? You want something in return? The Junin sat up and rolled her eyes at him. Her hard stare turned sexy as she said, you should know by now nothing comes for free, especially information. Don't you know what I want, Naruto-kun? Naruto, ever the naive shinobi, looked at Anko with seriousness. No, I don't. How about equipment, kunai? She said, a little amused at his frown. You're stupid. She paused for the first time, taking the strange request into consideration. Tell you what, You and I spar before we leave for Konoha and I'll tell you about every shinobi I know. But we spar seriously. What do you want to know, anyway? Their character, jutsu and fighting styles. Don't even bother telling me anything about anyone if you don't know all three. Although Kumogakure remained largely in disarray, numerous structures had already undergone restoration. Despite Tsunade's best efforts, many deaths had occurred and the village remained in mourning. The Raikage said, almost reluctantly, Konoha shinobi, I've thanked the others for your assistance when they departed a week ago. The same gratitude applies to you as well. He scowled at the blonde captain of the Konoha Genin team. Jiraiya, one of the Sannin who had opted to stay behind, was leaning against the wall behind the team. Naruto yelled, don't worry, old man. These Chunin exams would have been boring without my interference. After snapping at the blonde, Mabui gave him a single blow to the head. Respect, Naruto.kun. The huge man had already broken his own table in two when he exclaimed, leave the idiot be, he's hopeless. He wasn't interested in sending a Kumo team to accompany them and escort them to Konoha, saying instead, since Jiraiya Sama is traveling back to Konoha with you lot, I'm sure you'll be fine on your own. He gave Naruto a startled smile and said, unless you want someone along? Konoha Chunin, the blonde, appeared truly perplexed. I have no idea what you're talking about, old geezer. We'll be fine. Abruptly, the door to his office opened, and the blonde Samui entered, looked around at everyone else, then gave the Raikage a single bow. You've requested my presence, Raikage. Sama? No, Naruto did. What? After laughing at Naruto's outburst, the Raikage returned to his calm demeanor. He was staring at Samui's constant expression of neutrality, saying, you're a pretty stupid shinobi, kid. You two are somewhat similar in certain fields, but anyway, if you need it, Samui's team can escort you back to Konoha. That won't be necessary. Jiraiya's voice suddenly appeared. We've received a mission from the Hokage, our next stop is not Konoha. I see. Such a shame, too. Naruto felt as though, rather than being perplexed by his smile, he ought to glare at it. Then by all means, leave. Samui's team will see you off at the gates. Naruto bowed formally in front of the leader, Raikage. Sama. This caused the entire office to become depressing. I apologize for not being able to stop what happened. When he looked up, it was expressionless. Please consider my offer. Naruto shook his hand and smiled, saying, you'll hear from me, Naruto. Thank you for what you did, we will not forget. Dosu wondered aloud. Powerful shinobi are usually unorthodox individuals. Curious, why is that? Samui, Karui, and Omoi followed by the rest of Team Unsen. The group's blonde fan user responded, matching Dosu's stride, that's simple. Dosu appeared to be reflecting the arguing couple strolling closest to Samui's squad when he said, the power rises to their head and the brain can't handle it. Look at Naruto and Jiraiya, for instance. Temari's younger brother said, they've gotten closer. Something happened between them. At that exact moment, Gaara resisted the urge to destroy the two metal puppets approaching Kankuro from his left and right, saying, there is trust between them now, like with Naruto and I. Kankuro didn't like how close the one on his right was to him. They also created too much noise. Walking on Gaara's other side, Tayuya spoke up, they're awfully similar, too. Loud and annoying. The bandaged nin glanced over his shoulder to find out why Gaara was calling him, Dosu. Your specialty is sound. It is in Kankuru's best interest you learn how to keep his dolls quiet. The former Otto.nin gave it some thought. Gaara turned to Naruto almost immediately after saying, it'll take constant chakra away from me. The best way is to teach Kankuro silencing Fuinjutsu. The only person I know who can do such is Uzumaki. Taiko. Uzumaki. Taiko. Kankuro was either overly preoccupied with manipulating the bulky puppets or he just chose to ignore them all. Here. Samui looked at the strange pair of kunai that Naruto had given her, then she looked at him. Why'd I need these? Jiraiya and the rest of Naruto's squad had already begun to leave. Naruto was left to bid Samui's team farewell. One's for you, the other two are for Kurabi and Yugito. This summons me when you throw it, kind of. Omoi whispered in shock, the Hiraishin, finding it hard to believe he would put such faith in a shinobi from a different nation. The blonde Konoha.nin nodded, yes. These last few months have made it clear that if I want you as my allies, I need to be able to protect you. The Akatsuki is too dangerous. Samui reluctantly accepted the three Hiraishin kunai from Naruto, studying them with interest. She raised her head once more to meet Naruto's. Thank you, Naruto. The other blonde smiled, then looked serious. Naruto then extended his hand to Samui and said, "Don't forget to give them to Yugito and Kurabi and explain to them what they do. It's very important. Until we meet again, it might be a while." Samui shook his hand with hers, but she did not release it. Her gaze became very intense, and Naruto forgot all about Omoi and Karui standing behind her, saying, "I've enjoyed your company, Naruto. Be careful." As Omoi observed the conversation between Naruto and Samui, his eyes grew wide. He gave Karui a playful shove in the shoulder, but he noticed that she was equally taken aback. Ah. Naruto acknowledged, noticing at this point how warm Samui's hand was. "Me too, Samui. Enjoyed your company." He tipped his head slightly, suddenly feeling a little uncomfortable. You be careful too. Don't hesitate to summon me with the kunai, okay?" As Samui's hand tightened around his and she drew closer to him, shocking Omoi and Karui, Naruto gulped and said, "I won't." But because their faces were so close to one another, she could only look into Naruto's eyes. She appeared to be about to speak, and Naruto appeared to be following suit, but she remained silent. She abruptly released his hand and spun around after that. At that moment, Karui and Omoi collapsed to the ground, and Naruto blushed greatly. "I'll be seeing you." "Yeah." He watched in awe as Samui turned to leave. Turning to Karui and Omoi was easy. They were a mess on the floor. "You guys take care of her, yeah?" He then turned to follow the other members of his squad. Omoi got up from the floor, stuttered, he was actually kinda cool. Karui did nothing more than gaze at Naruto's dimming form in the distance. She let Omoi help her up, sighed once. "Samui's rubbing off on you. But yeah, he's a dependable guy. A lucky bastard is what he is." As the final Konoha.nin left Kumo, A observed, "Akatsuki has made an enemy out of us. He said he wanted you as an ally, right?" Watching Naruto and his group go, Kurabi stood behind his brother and appeared very serious. When he wasn't rhyming, Kurabi was angry, and these past few weeks, he's been angry a lot. "Akatsuki will pay for this. I will ally myself with him, brother. He seems to know what he's doing, and I think he is already stronger than I am." That was how his own village had been destroyed. It was under reconstruction, but nothing would ever be the same. Before he performed rap again, it would be some time. "Maybe he is," I concurred. "And that's a dangerous thought. If the Akatsuki has single individuals capable of causing this, then we should crush them, as Naruto wants, as I want." Gazing up at the tallest peak in Kumo, B thought of all the men and women around him, laboring to rebuild Kumogakure. Not all of Kumo got hit, but he was reminded by A, we owe him and her. We owe them too much. We will ally ourselves with Uzumaki Naruto. That is all he asked for in return. I will never betray him for saving most of the lives in Kumogakure. B asked, "Tsunade Sama too?" A moaned a little. He couldn't believe the woman had the audacity to make him cancel all of her debts in the land of lightning, but she said, "I suppose. That wrench hasn't changed a bit. All the same, it's a small price to pay for the lives that Iwanuken and Deidara nearly lost." Indeed, A more than tripled the reward for that prick. A member of Akatsuki, wearing a mask, handed the man in front of him a suitcase full of cash and said, "Killing him off is very good for business, Nagato." When Kakuzu came in, Pain's Diva Path was still talking to Sasori. Diva Path answered, "He still has some uses." Sasori chimed in, saying, "He's a powerful member, just a bit too explosive." The oldest person in the room turned away and said, "I'll make sure I'm the one who kills him when he is no longer useful, then. He'll be a fun kill, I think." Resuming their conversation, Diva Path carried on where they had left off. "So, Uzumaki Naruto knows Hiraishin no Jutsu and advanced Fuinjutsu. His mother and father were Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Kushina." Nagato hesitated for a moment, somewhere farther away, as he considered his own last name. He initially believed Konoha had simply used his last name as a ruse until he heard the Kyuubi Jinchuriki's full name. "So, we truly are related then, Uzumaki Naruto. So you haven't spoken to Tsunade yet?" Jiraiya was shouted at by Naruto. "Are you kidding? She was furious with me before I teleported her to Kumogakure. Last time I saw her was in the presence of the Raikage, and even then she looked ready to rip my head off and feed it to that pig of hers." Walking beside Tayuya, behind the two, Tamari said, "You kinda deserve it, Taiko, for doing that to her assistant." The redhead agreed, saying, "Even I think that went too far, asshole. Real torture is what it was." Naruto exhaled slightly in frustration. I know. I'll apologize to Shizune and Tsunade soon, okay?" he said. As soon as Tsunade. Sama doesn't look like she wants to massacre me. Might be long, kid. She still looks at me that way just for checking out her boobies 20 years ago. The Naruto team gave Jiraiya a disinterested glance.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.